Welcome, everyone. Jack,
Welcome.
good to see you, my friend. I see you got your cat.
Yeah.
Going on
Baxter
there.
decided to make a surprise visit. He's interested in the UAP hearing too.
All right. Well, let me put up the UAP hearing. From what I can see right now, as can be expected from an institution as incorruptible as our fine Congress, they are not on time, which at least we are. So there's that. So here we go. All right. So let's see if there's actually something going on in this thing.
We'll begin
It didn't even
shortly.
seem to be any background music or anything either. All right, but that's a little bit better, right?
That's better. So I guess before we get started, we can talk about what do you think about
What happened last
Tim?
night?
Yeah, Tim Burchett and Luna being replaced, and who is going to chair this thing? At first I heard Garcia, but Garcia made a tweet saying that he's not going to lead it.
Yes. So there's this guy. I think his name's like Grothman. Does that sound right? Because the
I don't
Republicans
know Rothman.
have the majority. So he's that guy. Let me just make sure I have his name correct. So because there's obviously a lot of confusion on this. Yeah, Glenn Grothman. And I don't know precisely how long he's been in Congress, but if I'm ageist and just look at his picture, I would say probably a while. Whereas this other guy, Garcia, Robert Garcia, and there's another look, I just want the truth, so I try to make sure that I have my facts straight. And there was this thing going on UFO Twitter that suggested that he got some like $360,000 check from Lockheed Martin. That's completely untrue. It's not.
Okay, good.
That's a different Robert Garcia. So if you go to Open Secrets and you look at his campaign contributions, I was unable to find any contributions from an aerospace and defense company.
Okay, well, that's
So
encouraging.
that doesn't mean he didn't get any. It just means that there was nothing significant. Right?
He's not blatantly corrupt.
Yeah, I don't think that's the play with him. I think the play with him is like a patsy play, right? Like his background, he has like an Ed.D. from some school in California. He's a former teacher. My parents are former teachers, so nothing against being a former teacher, but he's been in Congress for less than a year. He started in 2023, and he's extremely partisan. You can go and figure out which side, but that shouldn't matter here. But just kind of just something worth mentioning. However, he has no military background. He has no scientific or engineering or technical background, and his only relationship, as far as I can tell, to this particular topic is that he likes comic books a lot, which is cool. You know, he's got pictures of him at Comic-Con and stuff like that. But this is not the person that, like, somebody mentioned that, it sounds like there was something on his Twitter account that suggested that they knew about as far back as July 20th that he would be in this hearing. But I'm sorry, like, we're not going to get good questions. I mean, I'm just bringing that out right now, right? Because if you notice his tweets, he's like, let's make sure we're grounded in national security. And look, it's been 75 fucking years, okay? Just tell us that something is there or not. Are we alone or not? Right? That's all you have to do. For fuck's sake, excuse my language. I'll tone it down. So it's been more than 8 seconds, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know what's going on.
Do we still have the 8-second Twitter rule?
Are they? Is there some frantic behind the scenes drama being played out right now? What was the guy? What was his name that you said is leading the hearing?
Grothman, Glenn Grothman.
Glenn.
He's a Republican from.
Never even heard of that guy. Well, I wonder if he and Tim Burchett are having an arm wrestle right now.
It sounds like Tim Burchett is still going to be there. I don't
Oh,
think
he's
it's
going
like
to be there. He's going to be there, and he's going to be asking questions, as will Luna. And I think that they're all they can give an opening statement or something when it's their time to give questions or something like that. So their voice will be heard. However, for example, if there was going to be like a surprise witness or two, as has been rumored that might exist.
There'll be no surprise witnesses.
I'm not expecting it, but there have been people like Michael Schellenberger or whatever his name is, who's a pretty clued in guy who has said that he expects something like that or thinks suggesting something like that could be possible. And so I'm just wondering if having a new person head the hearing, they won't call those witnesses or something like that.
I mean, people realize that this whole like secret witness thing affords you no protection whatsoever, right?
Right.
Like if somebody in the intelligence community is vested in the outcome of keeping this thing quiet. Oh, here we go.
The subcommittee hearing
there he
on
is.
Unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAPs, will come to order. Welcome, everyone. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. Additionally, without objection, the following members are waived onto the subcommittee for the purpose of participating in today's hearing: Mr. Burchett of Tennessee, Ms. Luna of Florida, Mr. Getz of Florida, Mr. Burleson of Missouri.
Jack, can you hear an echo?
Ocasio-Cortez of New York, and Mr.
I'm okay.
Wallace of Tennessee.
Okay.
Without objection, so ordered. For today's subcommittee hearing, both the chair
Are you
and
hearing an
ranking
echo?
member will have 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's just on my
They may
end
both
because
be
it's
given
playing
some
on
of
this
those
and it's
minutes,
also playing on
to other members
YouTube.
of our party.
So I'm just going to fight
I'm
through
gonna
it.
recognize
As long as the audience
myself
doesn't hear it.
for
That's
10
all that
minutes.
matters.
I'm actually going to try to get out of here in about 4, and then we'll give it to some of my friends over here. Good morning and welcome to the most exciting subcommittee in Congress this week, the Subcommittee on National Security of the Border and Foreign
I'm going to
Affairs
start posting
for
comments.
discussion of unidentified anomalous phenomenon. I'd like to
Thank you
thank
very
the
much,
brave
Black
military
Trump.
pilots and
Awesome.
personnel,
Love it.
I agree with that.
such as the witnesses on the panel
At least with
today
the
for
sentiment.
sharing their
Let's
stories
see.
on how they have engaged UAPs, which has brought attention to this matter. Curiosity and speculation from
Hello,
all walks
Rebecca.
of life
All right, I'm going to
have
stop talking.
generated
I'm just going to
interest
show
in
the.
studying what UAPs are and
Hey,
what
Jumbles.
threats they may pose. I will say that when I was younger in school, I read a book, a 1966 book called Flying Saucers, Serious Business. And for a while, when I was a little bit younger, I thought it was the most important issue out there. The lack of a transparency regarding UAPs, which was one of the themes of that book. In any event, it's led to interest in studying what UAPs are and what threats they pose. The lack of transparency regarding UAPs has fueled wild speculation and debate for decades.
I'll just answer this. They have another hearing at 2 p.m. Eastern time, so it can't be longer than 4 hours.
Evidenced by the large number of
Probably
people we
less
have
than
here.
3.
I also want to point out in 1966, President Gerald Ford
They're always late.
claimed
This is
to have
Congress.
seen a UFO, and in 1969 in Georgia, Jimmy Carter claimed to have seen a UFO. So this has led Congress to establish entities to examine UAPs. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2022 established the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, to conduct or to coordinate efforts across the Department of Defense and other federal agencies to detect, identify, and investigate UAPs. However, AARO's budget remains classified, prohibiting meaningful oversight from Congress. In addition to AARO's efforts, NASA is leading an independent study on UAPs that will identify how UAP data is gathered from both civilian and government
Baxter!
That can be
Baxter, get back here.
the topic. However, despite these offices being established, there lies a pressing
The
demand
public has
for
spoken.
government transparency and accountability that cannot be overlooked. And that's been a problem that's been around for 50 years. The
Any
Biden administration
organization that
Chinese
constantly
spy
says
balloon that
transparency,
violated
in
US
my
airspace
experience,
is one
tends to be
example
the
how
least
government
transparent.
is not
Right.
prepared
Every
for
time.
these. The Biden administration's
Let's
description
be
of
really
events
transparent
has
as
shown
I
that the
speak
government
behind the
continues
smoke
not to be
screen.
forthright. Between the Chinese balloon being shot down and 2 UAPs subsequently shot down following the event earlier this year, the U.S. government spent $1.5 million in taxpayer dollars on missiles. yet we have seen little clarity from the Biden administration.
We don't have any information on those
Transparency
3
from the
other
Department of
objects that were
Defense, our
shot down.
intelligence community, and our defense
I
industry.
mean,
On the UAP
I don't think
work.
they were
I
anything
have some
interesting,
questions about
but
that
at the
today.
same time,
Congress
if they're not,
recognizes
then
the
why haven't
subject
they
of
shared
UAPs
any of
is
those
multifaceted.
videos
I
with
think
us?
Requires a careful,
I think that's the
data-driven
point,
approach.
right?
Today
By
we'll see
saying
clarity
they
from
were
these witnesses'
UAPs,
testimonies.
then you start to
We will
conflate
seek
every
clarity as to what can
weather
be done to
balloon that's
improve
shot down
reporting
with a.
for
It's like a.
military and
It's like a.
civilians and remain
I wouldn't
committed
say it's
to
like a
objective
psyop, but it's
inquiry.
it's
Congress
meant
should
it's
work
meant
to
explicitly to
ensure that
confuse the
knowledge is
public.
not driven
I
by
can see
fear.
that. I can see that.
Today
That would
we
make
are
sense.
not just debating the existence
Again,
of
I don't know that
UAPs,
I'm
we are
saying that like
deliberating on the principles
authoritatively,
that
but I
define our
No,
republic.
that does make
Commitment to
sense. You know,
transparency and
if
accountability.
you know,
I
if you
look
can
forward to hearing
confuse
from our
the issue
witnesses
between
today
balloons and genuine
about ways we
UFOs,
can improve government
then it really does
efficiency
kind
and
of taint the whole
openness
thing,
when it
or
comes to
you know,
UAPs. I thank each of you for your
yeah,
presence here today and for your
that would
dedication
make
to
sense.
safeguarding the interests of the American people.
I don't
look
know.
forward to your
I think there might.
testimony. I'm going to
I
turn
don't
it
know what's
over
going
for
on.
2 and
That
a half
was
or
that was
3
a weird one.
minutes
That was a
to
weird one.
Representative Burchett from Tennessee.
Oh, it just for
Thank you,
people
Mr.
to know, I'm
Chairman.
going to have
Thank
to
y'all
duck
for
out
being
for like
here.
30 minutes.
I want to thank
Oh,
everybody for making this happen today.
master.
And I want to remind everybody this is a nonpartisan issue.
It's
This
talking.
has
We
nothing
gotta
to do
listen.
with party politics. I think the cover-up goes a lot deeper than that. I also want to thank my colleagues, Representative Anna Paulina Luna, sitting beside me here, Jared Moskowitz, my friend across the aisle, has an incredible mind, and I'm anxious to hear his questions. My buddy Eric Burleson, and it's not in my notes here, but Matt Gates. If it hadn't been for Matt Gates, myself, him, and Luna would still be down at Eglin Air Force Base trying to get some answers. He's got an incredible legal mind. Also, I know I saw it in the crowd there, George Knapp, my buddy Jeremy Corbell. They're not witnesses, but they've provided some statements on this subject, and I seek unanimous consent to enter those statements into the record, Mr. Chairman.
Without objection.
Also, would like to enter in, I understand now that this is unclassified and it's public record, but as we all know, that's sometimes difficult for the public to get a hold of. A report, Defense Intelligence Reference Documents, Advanced Space Propulsion Based on Vacuum, Space-Time Metric Engineering, some light reading for some of our members.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp wrote, since 1969, the position our military has been that UFOs pose no threat to national security and are not worthy of further study. I'd say that's the biggest understatement of the decade. He also goes on to talk about the dismissive attitude. It's at odds with what was revealed in documents, reports, and internal memos. Mr. Cabral says, as he writes these words, the UFO is emerging as a major topic of global importance. I can state that as a fact. Out there, I met a fellow who came in here all the way from Denmark to be here for this meeting. So this is huge. This is worldwide. I think we suspect what's going on, but I'd also like to thank the members of Congress who have supported our efforts to make this hearing happen. Some have even confided to me that they've had UFO sightings of their own. Those members, of course, some of them wish to remain anonymous, and I'll keep it that way. But also, finally, I'd like to thank these 3 brave witnesses here. They took an oath. They took an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States, and dadgummit, they're doing it. And we owe them a debt of gratitude. Y'all quit clapping. You're cutting in on my time. Just kidding. These folks, they've got nothing to gain from this. And I think you're going to find out that they've endured quite a few slings and arrows. We need to remember them in our prayers and their families. And I'm thankful to them for their honest testimonies. They have done interviews and appeared in documentaries like Accidental Truth to get their stories out there. And now they are all here to testify under oath for Congress. It's been so difficult to get here today. I said, in the Baptist church, we'd say that the devil's in our way. And the devil has been in our way through this thing. We've run into roadblocks from members, from the intelligence community, the Pentagon. I proposed legislation to go in the FAA reauthorization that just said if an airline pilot has a sighting, that when he makes that report to the FAA, that it would come to Congress. But I was told that the intelligence community did not like that, and the amendment was not even heard in committee. I think it's time for this country to take back our country. We need to tell the folks at the Pentagon they work for us. Dadgummit, we don't work for them. And that's exactly the point. This is an issue of government transparency. We can't trust a government that does not trust its people. We're not bringing little green men or flying saucers into the hearing. Sorry to disappoint about half y'all. We're just going to get to the facts. We're going to uncover the cover-up, and I hope this is just the beginning of many more hearings and more people coming forward about this. And I yield back the remainder of my time. I think, is it to Representative Luna, Mr. Chairman, or is that?
Yeah, we'll call Ms. Luna for her statement.
The circumstances surrounding UAPs has captivated the attention of the American people for decades, ingrained in even the minds of our nation's leaders from Jimmy Carter to Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump, Marco Rubio to Chuck Schumer, John Radcliffe to National Security Council officials. Yet from Roswell, New Mexico to the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, the sightings of UAPs have rarely been explained by the people who have firsthand accounts of these situations. This is largely due to the lack of transparency by our own government and the failure of our elected leaders to make good on their promises to release explanations and footage and mountains of overclassified documents that continue to be hidden from the American people. This isn't just how I feel. In fact, the American people largely believe that the government has actively covered up the truth about UAPs. One poll in particular found that 68% of Americans believe that the government is hiding information about UAPs and not being honest about what we know about them. And from my personal experience, I believe the same thing. Another poll found that nearly half Americans believe that the federal government is doing a very bad or somewhat bad job of dealing with reports of UFO sightings. As Representative Burchett just referenced on the FAA bill that just went through, you can tell that that's exactly happening. Considering the thousands of testimonies and videos taken on people's phones and eyewitnesses' accounts made by credible witnesses such as doctors, pilots, scientists, and active duty service members, it is unacceptable to continue to gaslight Americans into thinking that this is not happening or that the potential of intelligent life forms exists other than humans. Even more alarming is the fact that these eyewitnesses are many of times service members and have no assurance that their lives will not be negatively impacted or even harmed by their experiences. In being an active duty service member working on an airfield, I've had conversations with many pilots where they were in fear of coming forward for retribution and or being taken off flight status. How do we know this? Because the government has said nothing to assure us otherwise. They have also did nothing to calm the concerns of over 20% of Americans who have reported to have seen UFOs or UAPs. We are simply told not to question the government and that the government has it under control. Today is the first hearing of its kind where we will attempt to get down to the bottom of what is actually happening with UAPs. But we will hear from people who have had personal sightings rather than Pentagon bureaucrats who have always been sent to stonewall our investigations. Just so that the press knows and the people know, we were even denied access to a classified briefing in a SCIF prior to this hearing due to the amount of hoops that we had to jump through to grant temporary clearance to witness Grush, who has knowledge of classified information. It is time to have an open-minded discussion on this topic, to hear the evidence and understand the magnitude of what this means, not just for our nation, but for humanity. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back the rest of my time.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank you and Mr. Burchett for bringing this topic to my attention. Now we'll recognize National Security Subcommittee Ranking Member Garcia for 10 minutes.
Thank them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank first our witnesses for
before?
joining us today. I want to begin by thanking you all for your service to our country and for sharing your voices today and your courage to be here as well. To Mr. Graves, particularly grateful to you to spend some time that we had for you to share with candor some of your experiences, so I appreciate that as well. I do want to thank all the members of our subcommittee today and also those that are here and have waved on for their incredible interest in this issue, particularly to Congressman Burchett. I know that your leadership has brought us to this place today, and I want to thank you for that, as well as everyone else that's been engaged in this work. I also want to thank the oversight staff, who I know has been working very hard to ensure that today's hearing is serious, that it's transparent, and that it also provides appropriate answers, as our oversight body always demands. Now, it's really important that we're here in a bipartisan way to have this conversation, which really, to the heart of it, is about national security and key to the subcommittee's core purpose. This is the subcommittee on national security of the Oversight Committee. Now, our witnesses will testify today that UAPs have posed a serious safety threat, and we must understand this. More broadly, we're dealing with real questions that get to the heart of our faith in government. Faith in our institutions, as we all know, is at an all-time low. Partisanship and alternative facts make it too easy to doubt narrative or our institutions. But this hearing will offer the public unique perspectives, building on years of reporting by both federal agencies and the independent media. Now, some of the earliest reporting on this issue was a groundbreaking 2017 New York Times report, which revealed research, as we know now, on unidentified anomalous phenomena, or as many call UFOs, by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Mr. Graves and Commander Fravors' experiences with UAPs have also been documented by the public, not just by the New York Times, but CNN and many other national news outlets. Now, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has published public reports documenting UAPs, and on June 9th, 2022, NASA announced that the agency is commissioning a study to, of course, examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. Now, the sheer number of reports, whistleblowers, and stories of unidentified anomalous phenomena should raise real questions and warrant investigation and oversight. And that's why we are here today. Now, pilots have reported encounters for years. Now, because of the stigma around reporting these incidents, we still don't have a complete picture of actually what's going on, particularly as our witnesses will testify on the civilian side. And that is a real problem that we have today in the country. Now, it's very important that we show that Democrats and Republicans in Congress can come together in a bipartisan way to cut through misinformation and to look at the facts in a serious and thoughtful manner. If we are to advance oversight and public disclosure, we must also gain the broad support of the public. We will succeed getting facts out to the public faster if there is a broad public support as part of the process. Now, I understand fully the Department of Defense is hesitant to share information that could also undermine our national security by revealing information on the capabilities of our own aircraft, our sensors, and other sensitive material. At the same time, many people believe that we're withholding information from them, and that is dangerous also. I believe in openness and transparency. That is also the role of Congress, and I want to trust that the American people will be able to weigh the evidence and make up their own minds. Now, we have incidents where sensors, sometimes even multiple types of sensors, detect things that we cannot explain. UAPs, whatever they may be, may pose a serious threat to our
where's the
military
UFOs
or
already?
civilian aircraft. And that
Tim
must
said
be
they weren't
understood.
having little green men.
Now, my
but
career
come
and
on.
training as a longtime and career educator and teacher and researcher tell me that we should never rule anything out. We know that our space, of course, is vast and undiscovered. I also want to note that Mr. Sean Kirkpatrick, director of
Space
the
is
All-Domain
big.
Anomaly
Okay, all right,
Resolution
we're getting
Office,
somewhere
a
now.
component of the DoD office that investigates UAP data, has testified before the Senate this year that his unit has found no evidence of extraterrestrial activity. NASA has also stated they don't have evidence of extraterrestrial life either, and we've heard this, of course, from some of our government agencies. And we should remind viewers and witnesses, which I think is really important, that we also cannot share classified information in public settings. But questions, of course, remain that people want to see data and information for themselves. The enormous interest in the hearing today underscores the importance of a fair and open look
I
at
love
the
your
evidence from witnesses who can share their unique perspectives. Now, I know I certainly have a lot of questions, and I know that all the members of our committee do as well. We should come to this hearing with an open mind, and we should not let our existing ideas restrict us on either side. I hear over and over from many agencies the stigma around reporting and investigating UAPs prevents us from getting real answers. We know that whistleblowers have reported harassment, intimidation, or stigma as well, and this is not acceptable. If people can't report incidents which would have national security or safety implications,
YMCA?
and that also has serious consequences for us. As ranking member of this subcommittee, I know my job would be completely impossible
I'll start
if
singing, but I don't want
whistleblowers
to
or
get a
others feel
stand or
intimidated to come
flag.
before this committee. We can't be afraid of asking questions, and we can't be afraid of the truth. I'm proud to say that this hearing builds upon bipartisan work by members of the House and Senate dating many years back, which has sought to increase awareness within the Department of Defense and to mandate more of Congress of UAPs. We know the Senate is taking up an amendment to their defense authorization bill, which will create a commission with broad declassification authority. And we should all agree that that is an important step. Members of both parties and senior officials in multiple administrations have taken an interest in this issue, and we're proud to carry and build that confidence in the American people. This hearing will also not be the end of this discussion, but a new chapter and start to years and years of work that many folks both
Sean will be
in
better
the
than
public
this guy.
and within government have been working on. We should encourage more reporting, not less, on UAPs. The more we understand, the safer we will be.
Yeah, the
We
other
look your
shot.
testimony
Sorry,
from
there's
witnesses
three shots.
today with a long record of service to the
the
American
lovely
people
Sean.
and with subject matter expertise. Our witnesses have a unique
opposed
opportunity
to
to
the-
share the perspective, insights,
That doesn't
and their
sound right either.
experiences with the American people. And I encourage all of my colleagues to engage with these difficult questions with an open mind and to follow the facts on behalf of our country. I also just want to say more broadly that we should look at this hearing and believe that everything is on the table as it relates to UAPs. I think an open mind is absolutely the best. I want to yield 2.5 minutes, the remainder of my time.
It better
to
be on the
Representative
table.
from Florida,
We'll see if
Representative Moskowitz,
we'll see if he actually
for an
it
opening
actually is on the
statement. He
table.
also has been very much engaged in this issue, and I want to thank him for his leadership. Congressman.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ranking Member
He actually had
Garcia. Thank
another
you, Mr.
2.5
Chairman. I
minutes
want
that
to
he could've
thank
gone. Oh.
Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna for their leadership in pushing this hearing forward. I want to thank, obviously, committee staff and their staff working on this on a bipartisan basis because many Americans are deeply interested in this issue, and it shouldn't take the potential of non-human origin to bring us together. Additionally, I want to thank the witnesses
Good
for
pivot
coming
back to
forward share your
non-human.
perspectives, your thoughts.
We don't care about
and the
blinky
sightings
blinky in
of
the
UAPs.
sky. We don't
Unlike
care.
other
We
hearings,
know.
many times in Congress, you're not here to help a political party, but you're here to share information with the American people. And it's not something that is just going on in this administration. It's something that's spanned many administrations. For decades, many Americans have been fascinated by
that snazzy
objects
suit.
mysterious and unexplained, and it's long past time that they got some answers. The American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. Those are not the words of a UFO Twitter account. Though that is a direct quote from Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, that the American public has a right to learn about technologies of unknown origins, non-human intelligence, and unexplainable phenomena. In an interview with Fox News,
I think
recent
he's
former
talking
Director of
about
National Intelligence John
Garcia,
Ratcliffe
and
confirmed
he would be correct.
the U.S.
Clinton
government
would be
is
correct on
aware
that.
a lot more sightings of UAPs,
Yes.
and that they have not made that
He's
information
fine,
public.
but yeah,
I quote,
again, this applies
there
to
are a lot
Garcia,
more
I'm
sightings
assuming.
that have not been made public, Radcliffe said to Fox News. For me, this hearing is about transparency. We unfortunately live in a time in which many people distrust government and our institutions, and overclassification of
Radcliffe was
information
kind of
away
early
from
on
the
beating the
American
drum on
public
this.
or
Kinda
even
interesting.
Congress contributes to today's
By the way,
politics.
for
The American
folks who
people
don't
have
know
regular
Moskowitz,
questions.
he's a good
What
guy.
are UAPs?
He appeared in
How
the
come
hearing
media
with
doesn't
Luna
report more on
and
them? Are they foreign
Burchett.
adversaries? Are they U.S. technology? Are they something else? They ask themselves, how come when a Russian jet shoots flares at one of our drones, we have perfect pictures and videos to show the American people and the world? But when it comes to UAPs,
You
nothing.
can't have politics without the theater.
Of course, we
This is
must
the
always
theater.
protect our national security to maintain our superiority, like when stealth helicopters were only rumored to exist, but were used in the Osama bin Laden raid in 2011. But we can't allow that to be used as a shield to keep the American people completely in the dark from basic truths. The American people deserve to hear more about special access programs. Congress has a right to know if there's any unsanctioned weapons development, satellite imagery that has not been provided to Congress. Congress created the All-Domain Resolution Office in the NDAA of 2022. In its initial analysis, there are 171 uncharacterized UAP reports, and this is the words from the report, that appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. I believe more information is known about the 171 instances. It's time for Congress to reinsert ourselves.
Don't shoot yourself
I
yet.
call on our military leaders and intelligence officials to release more information to the American people
Have
about
your fork
UAPs.
ready.
And to our military leaders, if there's nothing to conceal, let
I'm
Congress
communicating in
go
mimes
to Wright
now.
Patterson Air Force Base, the Dugway Proving Ground, or even Groom Lake in Nevada. We should have disclosure today. We should have disclosure tomorrow. The time has come. Thank you, Ranking Member.
Thank you, Mr. Moskowitz, and I would yield back now to our chairman.
That's
Thank you.
probably true.
Right, now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Lieutenant Ryan Graves. He's the Executive Director of Americans for Safe Aerospace. Lieutenant Graves is also
By the way,
former US
spoiler
Navy
alert, I read
F-18
his
pilot with his own
testimony. Nothing
UAP
burger.
experience.
Same stuff
The
over
next
and over
witness,
again.
David Grush, is a former senior intelligence officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and was a senior technical advisor for UAP issues. And finally, retired Navy Commander
Oh, George Knapp is there. Cool.
David
Jeremy
Fravor,
Corbell.
squadron leader who worked as a naval aviator
Burchett
for 18
gave him a
years.
shout out at the beginning.
Mr. Fravor has his own.
Lou said he was going to be in
experience
Washington
known as
during
the TikTok event.
this
I
time
look forward
period.
to
Is
hearing
he
from all
in
three
the
of you
audience?
today. Pursuant to
Now, he's just said the
Committee
exit,
Rule 9G,
logging
the
who's
witnesses
going
will
in and
please
out.
stand and raise their right
That
hand.
is if he's still a counterintelligence officer.
Right.
Do you solemnly swear
Is he back
or
there?
affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
John Kirkpatrick there.
Let the
Any
record show
other-
that all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. We appreciate you all being here
That
today
is
and
true.
look forward to your testimony.
They
We
would not be
remind
able
the
to produce
witnesses
this
that we have
much
read your
gas.
written statements.
Gas
and
gas
will
is a
appear
big
in full in the
problem.
hearing record. Please try to limit
Space
your
is
oral
littered with
statements to
UFOs
5
that just
minutes.
ran out of gas.
As a reminder, please press the button on the microphone in front of you
I mean,
so that it's on.
ET
and
should
members
just talk to
can hear you.
Congress. Congress
When you
got
begin
plenty
to
of gas.
speak, the light in front
Right,
of you
right.
will
They've
green.
got gas.
After 4 minutes, it'll turn yellow, and the red light, when that comes on, it tells you your 5 minutes have expired. I'll now recognize Mr. Graves for 5 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Grothman, Ranking Member Garcia, distinguished members of the House Oversight Subcommittee on National Security, Representatives Burchett and Luna. My name is Ryan Fobbs Graves, and I'm a former F-18 pilot with a decade of service in the U.S. Navy, including 2
Well, we learned
deployments
his
in
middle
Operation
name. We
Enduring
learned
Freedom
something
and
today.
Operation Inherent Resolve.
What was it? I missed
I
that.
have experience
Bob?
advanced UAP firsthand, and I'm here to voice
Bob?
the concerns of more than 30 commercial
like,
aircrew
I don't
and
know.
military veterans
Robert
who have
T.
confided
Bob?
their
Yeah.
similar encounters with me. Today, I would like to highlight 3 critical issues that demand our action. As we convene here, UAP are in our airspace, but they are grossly underreported. These sightings are not rare or isolated, they are routine. Military aircrew and commercial pilots, trained observers whose lives depend on accurate identification, are frequently witnessing these phenomena. The stigma attached to UAP is real and powerful and challenges national security. It silences
Fox.
commercial pilots who fear professional
More
repercussions,
likely.
discourages witnesses. It is only compounded by recent government claims questioning the credibility of eyewitness testimony. Parts of our government are aware of more about UAP than they let on, but excessive classification practices keep crucial
Yeah, it was
information
online
hidden.
last night. It's still
Since
online. You can read
2021,
all 3 of them.
all UAP videos are classified
let
as
me-
secret.
let me
I
find the
avoided
link.
This level
reading
of secrecy
anything
not
because I
only
didn't want to
impedes our
spoil it for
understanding,
myself.
I'll
fuels
I'm gonna
speculation
I'll
and
post it in the
mistrust.
links. Let me find it.
In 2014, I was an F-18 Foxtrot pilot in the Navy Fighter Attack Squadron 11, the Red Rippers. And I was stationed at NAS Oceana in Virginia Beach. After upgrades were made to our jet's radar systems, we began detecting unknown objects operating in our airspace. At first, we assumed they were radar
This is
errors,
Graves.
but soon we began to correlate the radar tracks with multiple onboard sensors, including infrared systems, eventually through visual ID. During a training mission in Warning Area Whiskey 72, 10 miles off the coast of Virginia Beach, 2 F-18 Super Hornets were split by a UAP.
This is Fravors.
The object, described as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere, came within 50 feet of the lead aircraft and was estimated to be 5 to 15 feet in diameter. The mission commander terminated the flight immediately and returned to base. Our squadron submitted a safety report, but there was no official acknowledgement of the incident and no further mechanism to report the sightings. Soon, these encounters became so frequent that aircrew
And
would
this is
discuss the risk of
Grush's.
UAP as part of their regular pre-flight briefs. Recognizing the need for action and answers, I founded Americans for Safe Aerospace. The organization has since become a haven for UAP witnesses who were
I get the
previously
reference to
unspoken
Mike
due to the
Tyson.
absence
I
of a
get
safe intake process.
the reference to
More than 30
Degrassi,
witnesses
but I
have
don't
come
know how
forward
they
and almost
talk.
5,000 Americans have
Tyson
joined us in the fight
DeGrasse.
for transparency at safeaerospace.org.
Degrassi. It's like the
The
Canadian
majority of witnesses are commercial pilots at major airlines.
preteen show.
Often, they are veterans with
I'd like to
decades of
see,
flying. Pilots are
interview
reporting UAP at
a
altitudes
panel
that
of the
appear
two of them
above them
together.
at 40,000 feet, potentially in low Earth orbit or in the gray zone below the
Mike
common
Tyson
line,
could be talking about toad
making
venom.
inexplainable
he could
maneuvers
get
like
my-
right-hand turns in
DeGrasse
retrograde orbits or
Do
J-hooks.
some toad, yeah. You know,
Sometimes
Mike
these
Tyson is
reports
big
are
on the toad
reoccurring,
venom.
with numerous recent sightings
I'm
north of
intrigued by
Hawaii
it.
and in the North Atlantic. Other
There's
veterans are also coming
secretions,
forward
Stephen Greer.
to us regarding UAP encounters in our airspace
Licking
and
the
oceans.
toad.
The most compelling
just
involved
putting this up for
observations of UAP
completion.
by multiple witnesses and
I
sensor
do want to
systems.
try that.
I
Graves,
believe these accounts are only scratching the
Gr-
surface, and more
Fravor,
will share their experiences
and
once
that's
it is safe
Grush.
to do so.
Yeah, apparently Mike Tyson has like
In closing,
a
I
collection of
recognize the
toads.
skepticism
He actually
surrounding
has
this
like
Oh,
topic.
for
arms.
DMT.
If everyone could see the
Yeah.
sensor and video data I
Yeah.
witnessed, our national conversation would change.
I like
I urge
taking the
us to put aside
toads because
stigma
they're
and address
pretty,
the
pretty,
security and
pretty
safety
awesome.
issue this topic represents. If
Like
UAP
going
are
on
foreign
DMT
drones,
trips
it is an urgent
and
national
knocking
security
people
problem.
out.
If it is something else, is an issue for
I
science.
want to see a Neil deGrasse
In
Tyson
either
on some
case,
code
unidentified
solution.
objects are concerned for
Oh,
flight
he's talking about
safety.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
American
I'm
people
talking
deserve to know what is
Degrassi.
happening in our skies. It is long overdue. Thank you.
Oh, no, there's Mike Tyson. That's the one that's into it.
Mr. Grush?
We're just like combining them together.
Mr. Chairman, ranking members and congressmen, thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an important issue, and I'm grateful for your time. My name is David Charles Grush. I was an intelligence officer for 14 years, both in the U.S. Air Force, both active duty, Air National Guard, and Reserve, at the rank of major, and most recently from 2021 to 2023, at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, at the GS-15 civilian level, which is the military equivalent of a full bird colonel. I was my agency's co-lead in unidentified anomalous phenomena and transmedium object analysis, as well as reporting to the UAP task force, UAPTF, and eventually, once it was established, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO. I became a whistleblower through a PPD-19 urgent concern filing in May 2022 with the Intelligence Community Inspector General. Following concerning reports from multiple esteemed and credentialed current and former military and intelligence community individuals that the U.S. government is operating with secrecy above congressional oversight with regards to UAPs. My testimony is based on information I've been given by individuals with a long-standing track record of legitimacy and service to this country, many of whom also have shared compelling evidence in the form of photography, official documentation, and classified oral testimony to myself and many of my various colleagues.
The NASA.
I have taken
More data,
every step
more
I
data,
can to corroborate
more
this
data.
evidence over
More
a
data,
period
more
of
data.
4 years while I was with the UAP task force, and do my due diligence on the individual sharing it. This is because of these steps, I believe strongly in the importance of bringing this information before you.
Yes.
I am driven by a
Nothing.
commitment of both to truth and transparency, rooted in our inherent duty to uphold the United States Constitution and protect the American people. I'm asking Congress to hold our government to this standard and thoroughly investigate these claims. But as I stand here under oath now, I am speaking to the facts as I've been told them. In the U.S. Air Force, in my National
Dang,
Reconnaissance Office, NRO, reservist capacity, I was a member of the UAP task force from 2019 to 2021. I served at the NRO Operations Center on the director's briefing staff, which included the coordination of the
part's not
presidential
important.
daily brief
What's important
and
are the
supporting
questions.
variety
And we'll
of
know
contingency
immediately
operations, which
Right,
I was the
right.
Center of the questions, how this
intelligence
is gonna
division
go.
chief backup.
But I mean, this dude is possibly
In 2019,
literally risking his
the UAP
life
task
being there.
force director
They're giving this
asked me
testimony.
to identify all special access programs and controlled access programs, also known as SAPs and CAPs, we needed to satisfy our congressionally mandated mission and
Yeah,
we were
well,
directed
Greer was
at the
actually
time
trying to take
the
credit
DevSec.
for Grush, a few weeks ago. Saying,
At the time, due to my
he
extensive
was,
executive level intelligence
mentored
support
Grush
duties, I was
and
cleared to
taught him
literally
everything.
all relevant compartments and
Maybe he
in
took
a
the $2
position
billion
of extreme
and
trust,
ran.
both in my military
right?
and civilian capacities. I was
You know,
informed in the
what's
course of
2%
my
of the
official duties of a
Pentagon's budget between
multi-decade
friends?
UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program, to which I was denied access to those additional read-ons when I requested it. I made the decision, based on the data I collected, to report this information to my superiors and multiple inspectors general, and in effect becoming a whistleblower. As you know, I've suffered retaliation for my decision, but I am hopeful that my actions will ultimately lead to a positive outcome of increased transparency. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. Commander Favor.
George Knapp is
Fravor?
back there taking notes like a good reporter. Love you, George.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Congressman.
George is old school.
Um,
Back when they
I want
actually
to
used
first
to
thank you for the
report
invitation to speak to
truth.
the committee on the UAP topic that's been in the news for the past 6 years and seems to be continuing to gain momentum. As you know, my name is David Fravor. I'm a retired commander in the United States Navy. In 2004, I was a commanding officer of
Right.
Strike Fighter Squadron 41, the world famous Black Aces. We are attached to Carrier Wing 11 stationed on board the USS Nimitz and have begun a 2-month workup cycle off the coast of
I don't think
California.
most people in the Pentagon know what's going on.
On this day, we were scheduled for a
to be
2v2
honest. I
air-to-air
think it's
training with
very,
the
like a
USS
very
Princeton as
small
our control.
cabal of people.
When we launched off Nimitz, my wingman
gotta
was
be to
joining
keep
up. We were told that
the
the
silence
training
for
was going
so
to be
long.
suspended and we're going to proceed with real-world tasking. As we proceeded to the west, the air
Yes.
controller was counting down the
Yeah, I
range to an
recognize his
object that we were
tats.
going to, and we were unaware of what we were going to see when we arrived.
Yeah.
The controller had told us that these objects had been observed for over 2 weeks, coming down from over 80,000 feet, rapidly descending to 20,000 feet, hanging out for hours, and then going straight back up. For those who don't realize, above 80,000 feet is space. We arrived at the location
like
at
a
approximately
single lady.
20,000 feet, and the controller called merge plot, which means that our radar blip was now in the same resolution cell as the contact. As we looked around, we noticed that we saw some whitewater off our right side. It's important to note that the weather on this day was as close to perfect as you could ask for off the coast of San Diego. Clear skies, light winds, calm seas, no whitecaps from waves. So the whitewater stood out in a large blue ocean. All 4 of us, because we
Or
were
at
in
least it's sitting
F-18F, so
on
we had
pins and
pilots and
needles.
Wizzo in the back seat, looked down a small, saw a white tic-tac object with a longitudinal axis pointing north-south and moving very abruptly over the water.
He won't say a word about
There were no
Lazar.
rotors,
Lazar
no
won't
rotor
even come
wash,
up.
or any sign of visible control surfaces like wings.
Too
Well,
controversial.
As we
Grudge's
started
story
clockwise towards the object,
really,
my Wizzo
you
and I
know,
decided to go down and
validates
take
a
a
lot
closer
of
look at
what
the other
Bob
aircraft
said.
staying in high cover to observe
Yeah.
both us and the Tic Tac. We proceeded around the circle about 90 degrees from the start of our descent, and the object suddenly shifted its longitudinal axis, aligned it with my aircraft, and began to climb. We continued down another 270 degrees, nose low, where the Tic Tac, or we considered 270 degrees to where, and we went nose low to where the Tic Tac would have been. Our altitude at this point was about 15,000 feet, and the Tic Tac was about 12,000. As we pulled nose onto the object, within about a half mile of it, it rapidly accelerated in front of us and disappeared. Our wingman, roughly 8,000 feet above us, lost contact also. We immediately turned back to see where the whitewater was at, and it was gone also. So as we started to turn back towards the east, the controller came up and said, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but that thing is at your cap point, roughly 60 miles away in less than a minute. You can calculate the speed." We returned to Nimitz. We were
That's Jeremy
taking off our gear.
George.
We were talking to one of my cruisers.
Right
getting
behind
ready
you.
to
The
launch.
biggest
We
tell
mentioned
is
to him,
lack of a suit.
and they went out and luckily got the video
Yeah,
that
really,
you see, that
yeah.
90-second video. What you don't see is the radar tape that was never released, and we don't know where it's at, of the active jamming that the object put on an APG-73 radar. And I can get into modes later if you're interested. What is
And
shocking to
active
us is that
jamming,
the
by the
incident
way,
was
is
never
technically an
investigated. None of my
active
crew were ever
war.
questioned. Tapes were never taken.
So
And after a
unlikely
couple
to be
days, it
black-
turned into a great
black
story with
project.
friends. It wasn't until 2009 until Jay Stratton had contacted me to investigate. Unbeknownst to all, he was part of the ATIP program in the Pentagon led by Lou Elizondo. And there was an
I think those are
unofficial
the
official
witness
report that came out
seats
that's now in
because
the internet.
there's like names
Years
on
later,
them.
I was
I don't
contacted
know.
by the
That's
other
a good
pilot,
question.
Alex Dietrich, and asked if I'd been contacted, and I said no, but I'm willing to talk. I was
It'd be
contacted by
great if
Mr.
those were the surprise
Elizondo,
witnesses.
and we talked for a short period of time, and he said we'd be in contact.
They
A
did
few
get
weeks after that, I
opening
was made aware that
statements,
Lou had left the
so they're
Pentagon
still
in
there. They're
protest
just not
and
sharing.
joined forces
That's
with
fine.
Tom
Yeah,
DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Steve
they're
Justice, and
only
others to
removed
form Police
as
Stars
as
Academy, an
leading the
organization
hearing,
that
but they're
pressed
still
the
there.
issue with leading industry experts and U.S. government officials. They worked with Leslie Keene, who is present today, Ralph Blumenthal, and Helene Cooper to publish the articles in the New York Times 2017 New York Times, and it removed the stigma on the topic of UFOs, which is why we're here today. Those articles open the door for the government and public that cannot be closed. It
Yeah.
has led to an interest from our elected officials who are not focused on little
Yeah, let
green
me-
men, but figuring out where these craft are, where they from, the technology
Yeah.
they possess, how do they operate.
Air
It
Force
also led to the
Office of
Whistleblower
Special
Protection Act and
Intelligence
the
took 'em.
NDAA. There are multiple witnesses coming
Okay, let me
forward to
zoom in.
say
Let me just give me
that have firsthand knowledge, and Mr. Grush just covered that. What concerns me is that there's no oversight from our elected officials on anything associated with our government processing or working on craft. Believe it not from this world. This issue is not a full public disclosure that could undermine national security, but it is about ensuring that our system of checks and balances works across.
I don't know
all
if I
work
can
done
zoom
the
in,
government
but
using
the first
taxpayer
one
funds. Relative
on
to
his-
government programs, even unacknowledged wave
As we're looking at it
programs
on
have
the
some
left,
level of
next to Jeremy
oversight by the
Corbell, it
appropriate
just
committee
says
members in the House and
reserved
Senate.
for witness.
And this work that
The
is
one
said
on
to
the
be
far
occurring
right
from
says
whistleblower
reserved, and
testimonies
I'm
should not be
assuming the
exempt.
one in the middle
In closing,
says
I would like to
reserved.
say that the Tic Tac object we
On the-
engaged
on
in
the seats.
2004 was far superior to anything that we had on time.
Yeah, I
had
think
to
that's
date,
just for
and looking to
Fravor
develop
and-
in the next 10 years. If we in fact
Ryan
have
and
programs
David.
that possess this technology, it needs to have oversight from those people that the citizens of this great country elected in office to represent what is best for the United States and best for the citizens.
No, that's a good
Thank you
point.
for
Yeah,
your
one
time.
of them says reserved for witness, and the other
Thank you
two
very
say
much. I know it's
reserved.
very difficult for all of you
Here we
in
go.
the past to try to
Why they're different.
illuminate this issue. Call on myself first for some questions. I'm going to start with Mr. Graves. Are pilots that you interact with as part of your organization, do you feel adequately trained and briefed on how to handle encounters with UAPs?
No. Right now, military witnesses to UAP have limited options for reporting UAP. But more concerning is that commercial aviation sector has not adapted to the lessons that the military has implemented. The military and Department of Defense has stated that UAP represent a critical aviation safety risk. We have not seen that same language being used in the commercial markets. They are not acknowledging this risk.
Okay. What steps do you think you have to be taken to improve a pilot's UAP reporting, be it military or commercial?
Right now, we need a system where pilots can report without fear of losing their jobs. There is a fear that the stigma associated with this topic is going to lead to professional repercussions, either through management or perhaps through their yearly physical check. So having a secure system, reducing the stigma, and making this information available through the public is going to reduce the concerns that aircrew have.
Could you just give me a little idea the degree to which reports in the past are not made public right now?
Well, I don't think there has been a proper reporting system to gather those reports and thus not report them. So to answer your question, I think there is a dearth of data due to the fact that the reporting has been limited up to this time.
Could you tell me why you believe it's kind of to play the devil's advocate?
We're talking about the prospect of non-human intelligence. They're talking about the reporting infrastructure.
There's certainly some national
of, like,
security concerns
blinky,
when we
blinky
use
in
our
the sky.
advanced
What? I
sensors
mean,
in our
come
tactical
on.
jets to be able to identify these objects. However, there's no reason that the objects themselves would be classified. I would be curious to see how the security classification guideline actually spells out the different nuances of how this topic is classified from the perspective of UAP.
That's a great point, Ryan.
I'll give you a
Why is
follow-up
this
on that.
classified?
Assuming that there are reasons why not all this should be made public. This has been around for a long period of time. Can any of the three of you think of any reason why anything related to UAPs, say 15 years and back, should not
Even
be
a song like
made public?
Unskinny Bob Bob, right? Instead of Bop Bop, Unskinny Bob Bob.
Right.
I think one of it is acknowledging a vulnerability, both from a collection and I'll just say a countermeasure perspective. So it's
We'll go with say,
that we haven't cracked for many years. Yeah.
even say 20 years back. Is there any reason why when you go back that far, things shouldn't be made public?
Unless it shows a specific national security vulnerability as it relates to a weakness in a particular defense system.
Oh, okay, Mr. Fravor, the TikTok incident that you were engaged occurred in 2004. What kind of reporting took place after that incident?
None. We had a standard debrief where the backseaters went down to our carrier intel center and briefed what had happened. And that was it. No one else talked to us. And I was in the top 20 in the battle group. No one came. The captain was aware, the admiral was aware, nothing was done.
Your commanding officers provide any sort of justification?
No, because I was the commanding officer of the
Okay.
squadron, so no.
Was this incident the only
That question
UAP
didn't work out
event
as
that
he
you encountered
anticipated,
while
did
you
it?
were a pilot?
Yes, it was.
Okay. This is for any one of you. Based off of each of your experiences and observations, do you believe UAPs pose a potential threat to our national security?
Correct. And that's exactly why he shouldn't be chairing the hearing.
Yes,
Right.
and here's why. The technology that we faced was far superior than anything that we had, and you could put that anywhere. If you had one, you captured one, you reverse engineered it, you got it to work, you're talking something that can go into space, go someplace, drop down in a matter of seconds, do whatever it wants, and leave, and there's nothing we can do about it. Nothing.
Okay. You two?
Well, I would
That's a
also
good
like to
strategy.
Wrong
Take it as dark
training,
as
though.
possible
From
to
the military
scare
aviation
people so
perspective,
they don't
we
ask
deal with
these stupid
uncertainty
questions.
in our operating
Right?
space
Right.
as a matter of our professional
I wish
actions.
they wouldn't frame it in
Identifying
national
friends and foes
security
is very
threat
important to
terms.
us. And so when we
There's so many
have
people that
unidentified targets and we
talk about the
continue to
false
ignore
flag
those due to a
alien
stigma
invasion.
or
That's
fear
just
of what
going to
it
lean
could
into
be,
that.
that's an opening that our adversaries can take advantage of.
What steps should be taken to better understand and respond to UAP encounters in the interest of national security?
There needs to be a location where this information is centralized for processing, and there needs to be a two-way communication loop so the operators on the front end have a feedback and can get best practices on how to process information, what to do, and to ensure that their reporting is being listened to. Right now, there is not a lot of back and forth.
Mr. Grush, in your complaint to the Intelligence Community Inspector General, you claim that you believe information is being hidden. What kind of information do you think was hidden, and do you think it should
Okay.
remain hidden?
Yes, I can speak to that very briefly in an unclassified manner. As you know, the preponderance of my complaint was classified to the intelligence communities. Both material acquisition and exploitation activity, also baselining the UAPs, but not sharing it with, intelligence professionals that are actually doing step briefs to pilots, that kind of information. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we'll.
I think we need more information, Dave.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for your service and for testifying today. Want to just talk about UAPs as it relates to what we're seeing in the pilots' interaction with UAPs. Particularly, Mr. Graves, one of the, I think, concerns that for members of this committee is this idea that pilots, there's no system to actually report UAPs and the stigma around pilots. And so can you just briefly, you mentioned that you're working with 30 pilots right now that have had encounters with UAPs, but you've also, I believe, discussed and know of many more pilots. This is just those that you're currently working with. Is that correct? Can you expand on that?
Certainly. I'll break that down in two ways. First, when we were first experiencing these objects off the eastern seaboard in the 2014 to 2015 time period, anyone that had upgraded their radar systems were seeing these objects. So there was a large number of my colleagues that were detecting these objects off the eastern seaboard. They were further correlating that information with
I
other
know
onboard
that
sensors.
pilot
Many of them also had
reporting
their own,
mechanics are
eye sightings as
important
well
to this
of these
whole
objects.
process.
Now, that was
But
our personal
we're here to learn about
firsthand
UFO
experience
crash
at the time.
retrievals and
Since then,
reverse
as I've
engineering
engaged this topic,
and bodies,
others have reached out to
people
me to
being
share their
assassinated.
experiences, both on the military side as well as the commercial
Plantation.
aviation side. On the military aviation side, veterans that have recently got out have
I'm
shared their
okay with
stories
him
and have
profiting
expressed
from
how
it.
the
Like,
objects we were seeing in 2014,
I just want the truth. I
2015,
don't,
continued all the way
don't-
to 2019, 2020, and beyond. And so it became a generational
I don't
issue
think he's doing
for
this
naval
as a,
aviators
I
on the
mean,
eastern seaboard.
yeah,
So
if he
something
wants
we
to
were
make money out of
briefing,
this, that's
to
fine.
new
But
students,
he's
this is something
legitimately,
that was included in the
sincerely
notice
devoted
to airmen to
this
ensure that there was no accidents. And now with commercial aviators, they are reaching out because they're having somewhat similar experiences as our military brothers and sisters, but they do not have any reporting system that they can send this to.
And let me just add, both to Mr. Fravor as well as Mr. Graves, not having this system for reporting, would you both agree that it's harmful to not just our national security interests, but to understand this phenomenon of what's happening with UAPs?
I think it's actually, it's a travesty
Hang
that
in
we don't
there.
have a system to correlate this and actually investigate.
Yeah, George
So
Knapp
took the
stopped
East
taking
Coast,
notes. He says,
there's coastal
"Come on."
radars out there that monitor our air defense identification zone, so out to 200 miles. They can track these, so when you see them, they could actually go and pull that data and get maneuvering. And instead of just having the airplanes, there's other data sources out there. And I've talked to other government officials on this. So you need a centrally located repository that these reports go to. So if you just stuck it in DOD, you wouldn't get anything out
Sean,
of the
we need a
intelligence
centrally
community 'cause we have a
located
tendency not to
depository.
talk. But if you had a central location where these reports would come in, not just military, but also commercial aviation, because there's a lot of that going on, especially if you talk to anyone that flies from here to Hawaii, over the Pacific, they see odd lights. So I think you need to develop something that allows you a central point to collect the data in order to investigate.
Mr. Graves?
I would concur with everything Mr. Fravor said. I'll continue to say that the commercial pilots that have reached out to me through Americans for Safe Aerospace are doing so because they don't feel there's another way for them to report this safety issue.
And I think one of the clear outcomes of this hearing already
This is
that
what I
there
was
has
worried
to be a
about by
safe
having these
and
two
transparent
pilot
reporting process
witnesses.
for
It has
pilots,
nothing
both
to
on the
do
commercial
with
side and the
Grush's
military
claims.
side to be able to report
So it's
UAPs
almost
like they're red
also
herrings.
transparent,
No,
but also
absolutely.
understands the
This is
scope
all
of our
stuff
national
that
security
should be
interests,
done by
and what,
Arrow if
may be
Arrow were
classified
a
or not, but I think
sincere
there
effort.
has to be some sort of
This is
system.
what
So that's something
Arrow
that I
is
hope
for.
can
is
be an
how to
outcome that this
collate
committee
this
can
information,
work on.
how to refine recruiting
Is
procedures.
there anything else
how
for
to
just for the
use
two of you
data and
briefly
allow pilots
beyond this
and
reporting
other
system that you
witnesses
think
to
that
come
we
forward?
can do as the government to
This is
encourage and
not
facilitate
something we
more
should be doing
civilian
at this
reporting?
hearing.
On the
We're doing it
civilian-
right now.
Okay,
But
I
I
great.
think
guess
this
the
hearing
Arrow
is
isn't doing
going to
their
show
job.
American
Here we
people
are.
that their government takes this topic seriously.
And how about civilians that may not be pilots? what kind of process could be in place for civilians who are not pilots, who may have UAP encounters? Do either of you have any suggestions that could facilitate that?
I think his hair is
My
glued down.
recommendations would be to make that a sensor-centric operation
Yeah,
in order to make it as
100%.
objective as possible.
Okay. Sir, Mr. Favor?
No, I agree with Mr. Graves on that.
Okay. Just briefly, I also just want to note, particularly for the two pilots, another question for Mr. Grush. One of the things that I found fascinating in our discussion, Mr. Graves, last night as well, is that you both described UAPs and formations and the way they are observed in space or in our air, and the way that they move is essentially ways in which current technology or aircraft that we know of are unable to actually function or move. And so will you just, for the public record, again, once again, just briefly, just either describe or
Fair
note
point.
that aircraft that are being witnessed, particularly by the 30 folks that you're working with, are essentially outside the scope of anything that we know of
It
today
has
and the
to end
technology we
by
have today.
2
Mr.
p.m.
Graves,
Eastern
Mr. Favor?
time.
Yes,
the very
the
latest,
objects
if they
that
don't
are
leave.
being seen by commercial pilots
And
are
Congressman love to
performing
eat.
maneuvers that
Have you
are
seen
unexplainable
Gruffman?
due to our current understanding of our technology and our capabilities as a country. And that applies for the military as well.
Mr. Favor?
Yeah, I concur with that. We have nothing that can stop in midair and go the other direction, nor do we have anything that can, like in our situation, come down from space, hang out for 3 hours and go back up.
Thank you. My last question, and sometimes I know that you have also said some of these answers in the past. We're trying to get them on the public record as well, which is really important. Mr. Gresh, finally, do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses.
First good question.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those
All right, there's
locations were
hope for
provided
you,
to the
Robert
Inspector
Garcia.
General,
There's hope for you.
and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the firsthand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I would just say that I think that these questions are important questions, and I look forward to being involved in the process to get those answered. I know there'll be a lot of questions from other committee members, so I yield back.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Burchett himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr.
right.
Garcia. I would like to have you on my legislation to do just that on
Okay.
the reporting.
Bring it, Tim.
And we'll get together on that. Maybe you can be my co-sponsor on that. That'd be really cool. Thank you for those great questions. Mr. Graves, again, I'd like to know, how do you know that these were not our aircraft?
Some of the behaviors that we saw in a working area, we would see these objects being at 0.0 Mach, that's 0 airspeed, over certain pieces of the ground. So what that means, just like a river, if you throw a bobber in, it's going to float downstream. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These same objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, 1.1, 1.2 Mach, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that I don't have an explanation for.
Okay. Have you spoken to commercial and military pilots that have seen these off of our East Coast?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Favor, I noticed that in the Tic Tac video, it's Tic Tac like the candy, not TikTok like the Chinese Communist app.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. I just want to make that because my daughter corrected me on that and called me a boomer and said, "Hey, boomer," and I said, "No, baby, it's Tic Tac like the candy. You're gonna have to just look it up." And but now I would also like to say today is a day of many firsts. It's a miracle that we're having this meeting, and it's also a miracle that my wife has put up with me for 9 years today. Today is my anniversary, so I want to tell my wife
Happy anniversary,
and that I love her very much. As she likes to say, this 9 years have been the best 2 years of her life. So
I think it's also
Thank
the
you.
anniversary of the 1947
Mr.
National
Favor.
Security Act.
what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tac? Very briefly.
The performance, absolute performance. It was,
And you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has in this world that has those capabilities?
no, I think it's far beyond actually our material science that we currently possess.
Are you aware of any other reconnaissance platforms that have tracked or recorded the Tic Tac's maneuvers, maybe the NORAD system or any of the others?
I am not.
Okay. Mr. Grush, thank you for being here, brother. Thank you all very much. Have you faced any retaliation or reprisals for any of your testimony or anything on these lines?
Yeah, I have to be careful what I say in detail because there is an open whistleblower reprisal investigation on my behalf, and I don't want to compromise that investigation by providing anything that may help provide somebody information. But it was very brutal and very unfortunate, some of the tactics they used to hurt me both professionally and personally, to be quite frank. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate, as they say, when you're over the target, that's when they do the most firing at you. Do you have any personal knowledge of people who have been harmed or injured in efforts to cover up or conceal these extraterrestrial technology?
Yes. Personally.
Have anyone been murdered that you would think, that you know of or have heard of, I guess?
I have to be careful asking that question. I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities.
Maybe in a, if we could get in a confidential area, SCIF, we could talk about that. But unfortunately, we were denied access to the SCIF, and that's very unfortunate in this scenario.
Yeah.
Mr. Favor, do you believe that you witnessed an additional object under the water in relation to your encounter?
I will say we did not see an object. There was something there to cause the whitewater, and when we turned around, it was gone. So there was something there that obviously moved.
Okay, it was not the same object though that you were looking at, correct?
No, we actually joked that the Tic Tac was communicating with something when we came back, and because the whitewater disappeared.
We were in another instance, we're told about the capabilities of a jamming during viewing of when there were some people chasing some of these objects. Did you experience any of that jamming or interrupting your radar or weapons system?
My crew that launched after we landed experienced significant jamming to the APG-73 radar, which was what we had on board, which is a mechanically scanned, very high-end system prior to the APG-79. And yes, it did pretty much everything you could do: range, velocity, aspect, and then it spit the lock, and the targeting pod is passive. That's what we were able to get the video on.
I'm about to run out of time, but are you aware of any of our enemies that have that capability?
No.
Okay, I would also like to note for the record that like George Knapp breaking Area 51, he's the reason I knew about that. And the reason I know about the Tic Tacs is Leslie Keene from New York Times article, and I would encourage everybody to read that.
Shout out to George and Leslie. You go, Tim.
No time.
Very good. Mr. Raskin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Graves, you reported UAP encounters during training flights, I think, and have since come forward to warn the Pentagon that these encounters may be putting pilots at risk. My first question is, you've identified these as taking place on the East Coast. Is it just on the East Coast where these encounters have been reported?
No, since the events initially occurred, I've learned that the objects have been detected essentially where all operations, Navy operations are being conducted across the world. And that's
I've heard
from
that too.
The Ultimate Anomaly Resolutions Office reporting.
All right, can you describe your experience after you decided to come forward and go public with your experience?
Certainly.
He
Like
had
many others, in
cancer.
2017, I saw the New York
Yeah,
Times
I figured.
article come out as well. And for me, it was special because I recognized the voices on the video. I recognized the video itself. I had seen it when it was taken. I seen it when it was debriefed. And so that was kind of shook me because I realized that this problem was still ongoing. And so I reached out to colleagues back on the East Coast and realized that this was still a safety risk that they were dealing
Incidentally,
with. They
that
essentially
Steve
hit a
Van
wall with
Zandt,
how they could
the
move
guy
forward on this
from
conversation. It was at that point when I decided to try to
Springsteen
move the
Band, and also
conversation
the
forward
guy
myself.
in Sopranos gave him that.
Are there
do-rag.
common characteristics
David,
to the
what?
UAPs that have been cited
Gave
by
him that
different pilots?
do-rag.
And can you describe
Oh, okay, cool.
what
cool.
the convergence of
that's-
descriptions is?
Certainly.
I mean, I
we were
despise
primarily
that guy,
seeing dark
but
gray or black cubes
like I still
inside
think
of
it's
a
kind of
clear
a cool
sphere.
story.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
dark gray or
Yeah.
black
Van
cubes?
Zandt. That sounds very familiar.
Yes, inside of a clear sphere, where the apex or tips of the cube were touching the inside of that sphere. And that was primarily what was being reported when we were able to gain a visual tally of these objects. And that occurred over almost 8 years. And as far as I know, it's still occurring.
So I take it that you're arguing what we need is real transparency in a reporting system so we can get some clarity on what's going on out there, because there are many pilots in your situation, but we should have a way of developing a systematic inventory of all of such encounters. Is that right?
Yes, and I think we need both transparency and the reporting. We have the reporting, but we need to make sure that information can be promulgated to commercial aviation as well as the rest of the populace.
Mr. Grush, what about you? What was your experience after you came forward?
Well, it's only been about 2 months or so. So I guess my experience has been overwhelming support from former colleagues of mine that have privately messaged me, and I do appreciate that. But I do have knowledge of active planned reprisal activity against myself and other colleagues, and it's very, very upsetting to me.
Coming from where?
Certain senior leadership at previous agencies I was associated with. And that's all I'll say publicly, but I can provide more details in a closed environment.
Okay. Well, I hope you understand that there would be bipartisan rejection of any attempt to vilify, demonize, or engage in other reprisals against our witnesses and people who are telling the truth from their perspective.
Yeah, there were certain colleagues of mine that were brutally administratively attacked, and it actually makes me very upset as a leader to see that happen to other coworkers and actually superiors of mine over the last 3 years.
How do you account for that response? That seems like a bizarre response.
I call it administrative terrorism. That's their
that's my
tool
issue.
in the toolbox.
The fact that
to silence people, especially
they won't share it.
the career government service cares about their career, cares about their clearance, their reputation to climb the ladder, and when you threaten that career path, a lot of people back off. But I'm here to represent those.
I think it's a throwaway comment, but I think he wasted some time telling the story.
Mr. Fravor, what about you? What has your experience been since you've come forward with your perspective on this?
Actually, I've been treated very well. And the 6 people that were involved, myself included, all of them have or will be retiring from the military as 05s or 06s. And all my friends that are very senior, 3 and 4 stars, I've talked to them. They believe, they understand there's a problem, but no, I was actually treated really well.
And what is your general interpretation?
We really need more information about the retaliation David
phenomena,
Rush faced.
or what is your current thinking of trying to make sense of them?
Well, I'll say, I'm not like a UFO fanatic. It's not me. But I will
Well, it's
tell
in
you
the
that
government's
what
interest
we saw
to tell it,
with 4
because
sets of
otherwise
eyes
people will
over a
spin
5-minute period.
or imagine
Still,
far worse
There's
things.
nothing.
You know
We
what I
have
mean?
nothing close to
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
It was amazing to see.
absolutely.
I told my buddy I wanted to fly it, but
And the
it's
lack
just
of
an incredible
information,
technology.
conspiracies breed.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I
Those
yield
are
back to
real
you.
conspiracies. But we'll invent our
Thanks.
own
I'm
if you don't
just-
tell us the truth.
Mr. Grush, in speaking to you yesterday, I just wanted to follow up on Representative Raskin's questions. In the last couple of years, have you had incidences that have caused you to be in fear for your life for addressing these issues?
Yes, personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want everyone to note that he's coming forward in fear of his life. To put in perspective, if they were really not scared about this information coming out, why would someone be intimidated like that? To your knowledge, are NHIs working with adversarial foreign governments in either technology exchange programs or back engineering programs?
I don't have data on that. I'm not sure.
Have you heard or you had people come forward to present that evidence?
Not that particular evidence that you just espoused.
Okay, on the 19th of April, Dr. Kirkpatrick, head of Aero, had said that he did not find any evidence of UAPs. You also stated that you had, in your interview, that you had briefed him on information that you were uncovering, but that he did not follow up with you. Were the items that you divulged to him pertinent to national security?
Yes, him and I had a classified conversation in April 2022 before he took over Aero in July 2022, and I provided him some concerns I had.
Do you know why he might not have followed up with you?
Unfortunately, I cannot read his mind. I wish he did. I was happy to give sage counsel to him on where to look when he took the helm of Aero.
Okay, and then my last question for you before I move to Mr. Graves is you received prior approval from the Defense Department to speak on certain issues, correct?
Correct, through DOPSR, DoD Pre-Publication and Security Review. And I just want to remind the public, they're just looking from a security perspective. These are my own personal views and opinions, not the department's.
Okay, I'm asking that though mainly because I think that there are many people that would like to discredit you So it does bring a certain amount of credibility to your testimony.
I'm required by law to do that as a former intelligence officer, or I go to jail for revealing
Well,
classified information.
Yeah, we don't want you to
Yeah.
go to jail. My next question would actually be for Mr. Graves. Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you'd be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and/or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
Okay, and then another question on follow-up referencing the gimbal video Go Fast incident. Can you just clarify, because to our understanding, the footage was actually
Vandenberg is
put
like
off
a
at
super
certain point, but what
classified
happens at the end of
Air
that video,
Force
just for
base.
those Americans specifically
Like
that
super
are wanting to know about the rest
super
of that footage?
protected.
Certainly. There was some uncertainty or instability with the object. It seemed to rock a bit, and that's the last I had seen of the video. Much of the data that I would recommend be analyzed would consist of radar data that would provide precise kinematics on the object, as well as the fleet of objects that were operating nearby.
Okay, and follow-up, in regards to the reporting procedures that Mr. Garcia had addressed on, as well as Representative Burchett, with the FAA, to your understanding, pilots that are seeing this, commercial airline pilots, are they receiving cease and desist letters from corporations for coming forward with information in regards to safety for potential airline passengers?
That's a great
I have
question.
been made privy to conversations with commercial aviators who have received cease and desist orders.
So the American public should know that corporations are putting their own reputations on the basic, not the line, but
That is the biggest
ahead of the
revelation
safety
so
of the
far.
American
That's
people.
that's
And I
effed
think,
up,
would you agree
man.
with that statement?
It appears so.
Okay. And I guess this would be my last. Oh, I'm out of time.
I love her.
I yield. I'll be back.
There's cease and desist letters
Mr. Moskowitz.
from corporations.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's
Gentlemen, let's talk about
fascinating.
the laws of physics for a second. Mr. Graves and Commander Favor, I heard you talk about speed. When those objects broke the sound barrier, did they make a sonic boom?
I was in a jet. You can't hear anything. It's kind of loud in there.
Yeah, you're not able to actually personally tell within the vehicle. I will say the objects that we were seeing.
Take
they were
everything with a
spherical,
grain of salt,
and they
but I
were
mean,
observed at
I
the
take their
Mach 2,
testimony
which is
very
a
seriously.
Non-aerodynamic shape.
Yeah.
What about G-forces? Let's talk about G-forces of those vehicles. Could a human
Why are they asking more
survive those
questions about
G-forces
reverse
with known
engineering and UFO
technology
crash
today?
retrievals? I
No.
mean, they touched on
Not
it
the
for like
acceleration rates that we
2
use.
seconds.
Okay. What about what they look like? How close did you get? Did you see a seam or a rivet or a section? And what I mean is, obviously, the jets you're flying have all those things. Did these objects have those?
Do you want to go ahead?
I didn't have the detail to be able to tell that.
So we got within a half mile at Tic Tac, which people say that's pretty far, but in airplanes, that's actually relatively close. No, it was perfectly white, smooth, no windows. Although when we
Absolutely.
did take the original FLIR video that is out there,
Yeah, Lockheed
when
is
you put it on a big
I'm just
screen,
gonna
it
say
actually
it.
had
Everybody
two
knows
little
it's
objects that
Lockheed.
came out of the bottom of it. But other than that, no windows, no seams, no nothing.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs. Yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight, what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I would call it abuse here. So congressional oversight of conventional special access programs. So I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119 discusses congressional oversight of SAPs, discusses the DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a waived or waive bigoted unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I mean, I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
how does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but misappropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD.
Okay. Satellite imagery.
IRAD.
Let's talk about satellite imagery. We have satellites all over the place, some that we're aware of and many that we're not aware of, right? We're taking pictures of everything at every point and second. Mr. Grush, are you aware, do you have direct knowledge, or have you talked to people with direct knowledge that there are satellite imagery of these events?
That was one of my primary tasks at NGA, since we process, exploit, and disseminate that kind of
There's
information.
definitely satellite
I've
imagery.
seen multiple cases, some of which, to my understanding, and of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
I left
Oh,
NGA
yeah.
in April, so that's my information cutoff date. But I personally reviewed both what we call overhead collection and from other strategic and tactical platforms that I could not even explain prosaically. And I have a degree in physics, by the way, as well. And I am aware
I
that you guys have
guarantee
not
there's
seen
some black budget or some
reports,
black ops somewhere
unfortunately.
where they spent
And I don't
money
know why.
on
Do you have
hookers
direct
and
knowledge,
coke.
or you had spoken to people?
In fact,
with
I know
direct
someone who
knowledge
ran an
that
op
this imagery
who
applies
spent money on
to
coke,
crash sites,
or at least seizure on
crash
coke.
imagery.
to
I believe it.
break the
I
cartel.
can't discuss that in an open session.
Okay.
It's called Torn Image. Just look it up. There's a whole episode
Do
on it.
you have any information that the U.S. government is involved in a disinformation campaign to deny the existence of certain UAPs?
I can't go beyond what I've already stated publicly in my News Nation interview because it touches other sensitivities.
Okay. I'll yield the balance of my time back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Fox?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here today. Mr. Garouche, in your sworn testimony, you state that the United States government has retrieved supposedly extraterrestrial spacecraft and other UAP-related artifacts. You go so far as to state that the U.S. is in
He
possession
said non-human,
of,
not
quote,
extraterrestrial.
non-human spacecraft,
Wow.
end quote. And that some of these artifacts have circulated with defense contractors. Several
Question,
other
though.
former
Best question yet.
military and
Yeah, you go,
intelligence
Ms. Fox.
officials have come
Yeah,
forward
from the
with
random.
similar allegations, albeit in non-public settings. However, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the director of AARO,
Jack's
previously
favorite
testified
person.
before Congress that there has
Lovely,
been,
lovely,
and I
Dr. Sean
quote,
Kirkpatrick.
no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity or of, quote, off-world technology brought to the attention of the office. To your knowledge, is that statement correct?
It's not accurate. I believe Dr. Kirkpatrick mentioned he had about 30 individuals that have come to Arrow thus far. A few of those individuals have also come to Arrow that I also interviewed,
Okay.
and I know what they provided Dr. Kirkpatrick and their team.
Okay,
I was able to evaluate.
okay,
That
I
information?
need to go on.
Sure.
But my understanding that
Let the man speak.
his statement is accurate.
She's pretty vicious.
Came from a direct quote. And this contradiction is a perfect example of why we need to inject transparency into our government. And for another example, look no further than the pitiful response to the Chinese spy balloon debacle earlier this year. You may remember the mass confusion that ensued when the balloon was first spotted over Montana.
Oh my God, enough of the
4 days
balloon.
after it first entered U.S. airspace over Alaska. The Biden administration's initial inability to address the object
Yeah, this is
grew
not the
into
right
a
hearing to go
continuous
political.
series of embarrassments. After
I
news
thought
of the
she was
balloon reached the
asking about reverse
mainstream
engineering and crash
mainstream media,
retrievals, and then
we were
she's
assured that the balloon posed no threat to our security. However, after the balloon was allowed to transit the entire continental United States, fighter jets were scrambled off the
don't cut
coast
off
of South
Dave.
Carolina to shoot it down. This flip-flopping and obfuscation caused needless confusion, fear, and panic across the country. It's my hope, Mr. Chairman, that this sort of confusion will not be repeated. We should investigate
I'm not
the
saying
extent
she's
to which
wrong.
elements of our
That whole
government
situation
possess
was
or do not
a
possess.
staggering,
Yeah, but
astonishing
no, I
display
mean,
of
she's got a
incompetence.
point, but this is not what Dave
However,
should
the
be.
American people.
This is not the
We
place
owe
and
it
not
to
the
the
time.
citizens of this nation to make sure that our government is transparent and accountable. We must make sure that our government provides answers, and Congress must do
She
its
is.
duty
Good
This
points,
isn't
but
the
it's
place
not.
for it.
those answers.
Yeah, it's the wrong
With
time
that,
and place.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
She's not
Yeah,
going to
Mr.
even
Frost.
ask you about the reverse engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In
Well, cut it- yeah,
2022,
yeah.
NASA announced that it was commissioning an independent study team to examine UAPs. The NASA team is comprised of scientists across different fields, as well as former astronauts and pilots. In May, the independent study team held at its first public meeting, which included the perspectives from
Oh
NASA
my
senior
God, are we gonna
leaders,
get
as well as
questions
perspectives
from
from the Department of
Akasha
Defense
Quell?
and
Oh my
intelligence
God.
agencies. The NASA study team is
Collective
also
IQ of the
expected to
world is
release
gonna
its
lower
first
by
report
AMC
pretty
on
soon, and I
UAP.
think it's safe to say that we all eagerly await its results. Mr. Graves, how might NASA's research influence the commercial industry regarding safety in UAP?
I think NASA has a big role to play as far as
Well,
commercial aviation
NASA's research
safety,
would
and
be
it's one
really
of their,
good at
original
doctoring
charges as an
photos,
organization.
Right.
video.
One of the
Next
recommendations
question.
that have been put
They
forward
are
is to
amazing
utilize their
at
existing
removing UFOs from things.
to serve as a
They have
short-term
a real
fill
talent.
and trusted platform for pilots that want to report on UAP. It also has built-in analytics capability. and is
Interesting.
funded by Congress.
Gotcha. And also, Mr. Graves, are there any other industries that may be influenced by the NASA research on UAPs? And if so, how so?
Well, I think there is a large swath of commercial capabilities that could be brought to bear. on this
NASA is
topic,
completely
from
irrelevant. They
space-based
don't
or
do anything.
ground-based sensor
They just
systems that
lie.
are
I
available
mean, like,
open
let's
source
just
or through
shove them out of the
commercial
way. Stop. I
marketplaces.
mean, like,
And I
come
think
on.
NASA's work, as they work to identify and highlight
Well, I
specific
mean,
parameters that can be found, we
why are
can
we
take
asking
Yes,
Ryan about NASA? He doesn't.
NASA's great at
He doesn't.
covering.
this to the
NASA.
public
Ryan doesn't
sector
work
so
for
that we can have
NASA,
more open conversation about.
as far as
what we're
I
seeing.
know.
You know, in 2020, the Department of Defense released several videos of
Probably.
UAPs, including Mr. Freyer's experience, U.S. Navy pilots that recorded footage.
Yes.
In
I think
2021,
NASA is.
the Office
Yeah,
of the
they should
Director
teach
of National
Photoshop class.
Intelligence released a preliminary report on UAP events. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson stated that NASA would begin to
NASA.
investigate these events. In fact, I sit on Science, Space, and Technology Committee, and when we were doing a hearing with the NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, I asked, you know, why NASA needed to be
NASA's been
fully
around
funded,
for like
and there were many great reasons, but one of
decades.
them was
Why are
actually
you
had to
focused?
do
They're
with
irrelevant. They don't
UAPs.
do anything.
He actually
They just
mentioned
Why are
launch
we
stuff into
talking-
their
space
life
and
out
spend
there.
taxpayer dollars and
And
do
so
Photoshop.
either way,
Why are you focused on
these
NASA?
actions ultimately led NASA
Neither
to assemble the
Fravor,
independent study team that I
Ryan,
mentioned
nor
earlier.
Rush have
Also in
anything to do with
2021,
NASA,
Harvard
as
University
far as I
stood up the
know.
Galileo project to research and examine the
Oh, sorry.
origins of UAP. So it seems like both, you know, from NASA and in the higher education community, because of the work that y'all have done and people standing up, you know, I think we're seeing some of that stigma slowly going away. Mr. Freyer, do you believe that military pilots feeling empowered to share their
I'm just gonna
UAP
leave it on loop.
experiences has directly impacted the community's research goals on this topic?
I would say yes. I would say that, starting in 2017, when it actually came out, it took that stigma away. I mean, I've talked to multiple senators who said prior to that, if you'd have mentioned UAP, you'd have been laughed off the hill. And now we're sitting here today for a public testimony on what's actually going on. You know, I'm hoping that this curve will be more of an exponential and we'll get more and more transparent to the level that we can.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's important. I couldn't imagine I'm not a pilot, but I used to fly gliders in Civil Air Patrol. Huh? Yeah.
Pilot?
I'm not a pilot, but I used to fly gliders. Give this
And
guy
so
a
either way,
look.
I mean, I
Get
couldn't
him out.
imagine, being in the glider and seeing something, and then not feeling like I had the agency to talk about it. Mr. Graves,
Well,
can you
let's
discuss
hear more about this glider experience?
on your
This is
advisory
very
board?
relevant, and I'm
Absolutely. I think
glad we're
ultimately
talking
this is
about
going to
it.
be a scientific problem. And not only that, it's also an engineering problem. I've
This is
been
like the
working with the
biggest
American Institute of
question
Aeronautics and
in human
Astronautics to help them stand
civilization.
up a
And
UAP
this guy's talking
integration
about his
committee to help
personal glider
integrate their engineering
experience.
prowess into this problem. And so, yes, very much. I think this is an engineering and scientific problem as much
We
as
haven't had one actual question
And how might
about
Congress
UFO
help to
crash
facilitate
retrievals,
partnerships between
reverse
the
engineering,
scientific community and the UAP focus groups
bodies.
within government?
How long is
Well, I think
Spot
one
the
of the things
Idiot
they can
going
do
to
is
be
to have these
talking?
types of
Like, can we
hearings
just
to communicate to the public that this is a topic of
cut him
interest.
off?
I think that there is a pseudo market, if you
Yeah, isn't
will,
this
of
guy out of
interested
time yet?
capabilities and talent that want to approach this topic. And we're seeing that start to grow
Well,
now.
I
So I
mean,
think
be careful
continued
what you wish
conversation,
for, 'cause we
reduction
might
of
just go
stigma
from dumber
is
to
going to
dumber.
allow that to flourish
Well,
and
we
allow
might be
people to
about
help
to.
generate themselves.
100%. Well, thank
Well,
you
she
all
might
for
be
being
more
here. Thank you
entertaining
for
than this guy.
It's important
She
that
will
we keep
definitely
our
be more
top
entertaining. And of
scientific
course, I
minds
have like
focused on
3
this
minutes
issue
that I have to
and look for
leave
ways
for
to
30
increase
minutes. So
collaboration. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Mr. Comer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say I want to thank you for having this hearing, and I want to thank Mr. Burchett, Ms. Luna for leading this hearing. And with that, I yield my 5 minutes to Mr. Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to direct
good
this,
job,
I believe,
Comer.
Yeah, yeah.
but if any of you all feel like you need to jump in, just jump right in. We're good. Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open,
Fair
both
point.
scientifically. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly.
Oh, wow, I missed a lot of
previously,
comments.
1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of this crash retrieval, some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases that the recovered material would be in? And I know a lot of Congress talked about we're going to go to Area 51 and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just, and we move like a glacier. As soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up, but please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General.
And we could get that in the skiff if we were allowed to get in a skiff with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses, yeah.
What special access
Get him the
program
access.
for this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that
shoes.
publicly and how they've evaded oversight. In a closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right. When do you think those programs began, and who authorized them?
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because of
All right.
sensitivities.
If any of y'all want to jump in on any of this, you're more than welcome to. What level of security clearance is required to fully access these programs?
Well, anybody who has
And I say that because myself, Representative Gates and Representative Luna were basically turned away at one point at Eglin. So please go right ahead.
certainly difference between member access and say somebody like me, but anybody who has a TSSCI clearance and meets the eligibility criteria, the access adjudicative authority should be able to grant you access.
Mr. Burchett, if you'll yield. So just to put a fine point on that, there's nothing that you're aware of that's above special access program classification.
It's a misnomer that there's anything actually above top secret. Executive Order 13526 delineates the classification levels.
Right. But I draw a point on that because we can have access to those programs. And so the notion that we're not being given that access sort of defies.
All right, folks, I have to dip out for about 30 minutes.
Okay. I'll hold down the fort.
Title 10, you may not know this or not, but Title 10 and Title 50
see,
authorization.
Let's get it going.
They're inefficient. So
right.
who gets to decide this?
All right, later, man.
Everything is under control.
It's a group of career senior
All right, I'll see
executive
y'all
officials.
soon. I'll be back.
Okay.
Government
all right.
officials.
Have a good one.
Both
Or-
in and out.
Do what?
Both in and out of government. And that's about as far
I
as I
got
can
you.
go there.
All right. Well, that leads to my next question. Which private corporations are directly involved in this program? How much taxpayer money has been invested in these programs, to your knowledge? I mean, we know we audit the Pentagon every year, and I've been here 5 years, and they failed the dadgum thing every year. They lose over $1 billion a year, we think, and I was told the Department of Defense maybe 60% of their assets are unaccounted for, whatever the heck that means. In the public sector, you go to jail for that kind of crap.
Who doesn't
So
lose a
tell
billion
me.
here and there?
Yeah, I know when I'm a dollar off of my DTS travel voucher, I get hammered, but it seems like it doesn't work the other
If
way.
you
right?
sell over
Yeah.
if you sell over $600 worth of stuff on eBay, now you get a call from the IRS. So please, what corporations?
Yeah, I don't know the specific metrics towards the end of your question. The specific corporations I did provide to the committees in specific divisions and.
Uh-oh. Are we frozen? Was he getting too close to the truth? Come on. Come on, Dave. Everything was under control, Sean. God help. Yeah, well, okay. Is this frozen for everybody else, or is it just me? Okay. Really, this is like the heart of the meeting, and it's totally frozen. What? What's going on? What the hell? What? Okay, crap. What? This is ridiculous. Let me check to see if this is like this everywhere. Okay. All right. Let me. Okay. No, I'm over here on the GOP oversight live feed, and is now showing AOC asking questions. But I can't share the screen on that. I can allow you to hear her voice in the answers. Would you like that? Is that going to be too annoying? Restart your feed. Unfortunately, I'm the co-host, and I don't have access to the behind the scenes toolbox. Well, hell. Okay, I'm going to play. You'll hear the audio.
Contractor companies and any UAP related programs or activities.
So I'll just say that the information about
Okay, here we are.
the
Here we
contractor
are.
himself is provided by a witness, and I have no particular detail in
Understood.
that relationship.
Mr. Gresh.
The kind of general unclass wave tops, certainly the contractors, or the metal benders, so to speak, they're the ones actually doing specific performance on government contracts.
Are they required to issue any disclosure regarding UAP sightings, or do they engage in any reporting around this?
In terms of the contractors,
Yes.
not that I'm aware.
They do not. Okay. Now, when it comes to notification that you had mentioned about IRAD programs, we have seen defense contractors abuse their contracts before through this committee. I have seen it personally, and I have also seen the notification requirements to Congress abused. I am wondering, one of the loopholes that we see in the law is that there is, at least from my vantage point, is that depending on what we're seeing, is that there are no actual definitions or requirements for notification. Are there, what methods of notification did you observe? Like when they say they notified Congress, how did they do that? Do you have insight into that?
For certain IRAD activities, I can only think of ones conventional in nature. Sometimes they flow through certain, I'll just say SAP programs that have cognizant authority over the Air Force or something. And those are congressionally reported compartments, but IRAD is literally internal to the contractor. So as long as it's money,
Hopefully it'll smooth out.
profits, private investment, et cetera,
And
they can do whatever they want.
to put a
yeah.
finer point on it, when there is a requirement for any agency or company to notify, or any agency to notify Congress
Man, it's glitchy. What the hell?
through an email to hypothetically.
It's just fine on the
A lot of
the
it comes
live
through what they
feed.
call the PPR, periodic program review process. If it's a SAP or controlled access program equity, and then those go to the specific committees, whether it be the SAS, ASK, HISI.
Thank you. I apologize. I just, my time is limited. Mr. Graves, one of your main concerns that the FAA currently does not have an official process to receive reports of UAP from pilots or others, correct?
Correct.
And in your experience, what data should the Aero program prioritize for potential collection? We have, location, date, time, but are there other specific characteristics that should be included in these reports?
Certainly. I think that there's two categories that would be important. One would be
Actually, a
kinematics
good
and
question.
understanding the specifics of how the vehicle or objects are moving. And the second would be a more out approach of being able to look at origin and destination before the incident, as well as getting a better contextual understanding of how these objects are interacting with each other.
Thank you. Now, because I only have a minute left, I apologize, we only have 5 minutes today, but for the record, if you were me, where would you look? Titles, programs, departments, regions, if you could just name
Another good question.
anything. And I put that as an open question to the three of you.
I'd be happy to give you that in a closed environment. I can tell you specifically.
Thank you.
Dave, pony up. He's like a hot date that's invited to a prom and then refuses to dance. Yeah, Ronnie, it is a bent arrow.
Okay. Graves?
I was an operator, so
Chairman, here today. I'm over here. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, this is glitchy as hell. I
want
wish
to get
John were here. He
into
can kick the tires on his end.
specifics here, and the reason I'm going to go this way is because a bit about what I would call misdirection by official U.S. government with regard to UAPs, right? And so I'm going to get to that in a second. But last week, White House NSC spokesman John Kirby stated that UAPs are having an impact on our training ranges and need to be treated as a legitimate issue. Do you concur with his
Vince,
statements? That's for
all
each
the
of you.
way.
Yes.
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 Okay. Now, having said that, I'm
All
gonna take
right,
you to
wouldn't that be
specific
hilarious?
instances around the Phoenix Valley, because that's where I live. And in '97, we had the
AOT actually had some
famous
good questions.
Phoenix Light case. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. There were two things that went along with that, and the explanation was military training range off Luke and the Barry Goldwater range. Do you know anything different other than the official explanation of those lights?
Only what's in the public vernacular about it. That was outside the.
Why are you asking Dave Grush about the Phoenix Lights?
And if we
I mean,
wanted
I
to
love
just
that
my
case, but
question
this
along
is
with my
not
colleague from the
something you should be
Ocasio-Cortez,
wasting your
if
time
we
on.
wanted to find out more about that, where would we go to find the files, and who would we address? And are you going to tell me we need to go to a SCIF so you can tell us in a SCIF?
I could potentially give you a vector on that. That specific case, I'm familiar with it in terms of public, but I give you a vector in closed environment. Yeah.
That would be good. Thank you. So if that UAPs are having an impact on training ranges and considers it to be a legitimate issue, what steps can Congress take to address training range
Me too,
impacts?
man.
And I say
AOT
that
did a
having
good
two
job.
very
A
large
lot better than
training
this guy
ranges
talking about
in
the
my
Phoenix
state.
Lights.
And so we'll start with Mr. Graves and going down the panel.
Some of the initial procedures have been implemented, such as within the United States Navy, that have a range follower report that gathers information from pilots. I understand that a service-wide reporting mechanism is still pending. However, that would be a great next step. not only for gathering information, but for showing the troops that it is an acceptable topic and reducing the stigma.
Okay, please, all of you continue.
Yeah, as a recipient of a lot of those training range reports, sometimes we only get contextual kind of oral reporting. It'd be nice if they attached all sensor data and there's a system in place that can handle multiple classifications of data. And that's an issue with the F-35, right? That jet was never built to be an ISR platform. And it's a pain in the, we'll just say, butt to get that data off. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with the previous two, being a user of those training ranges. That the data has to be out there. You have to acknowledge that you're seeing them, and then you have to collect the data. Right now, you get the report, someone says, I saw something, but no one collects the radar data to back it up and do research.
Okay. Do you believe that the 2019 classification guidelines for UAPs interferes with the federal government's ability to be transparent with the American people? And do you think we need to be more transparent with the American people? All of you, yeah.
I'll say yes to that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with at least the UAP Task Force 2019 Security Classification Guide. I think it's fair. I did actually help author that with the.
Oh, you got a bias that way then.
But I will say, I'll call it a lazy attitude about declassifying videos. I mean, I've seen some of the videos of the recent shoot down, and I saw no reason that couldn't have been released as long as they mask some data. The American people deserve to see that imagery in full motion.
I would think, well, in my opinion, I will say things are overclassified. I know for a fact the video or the pictures that came out in the I think it was 2020 report that had the stuff off the East Coast, they were taken with an iPhone off the East Coast. A buddy of mine was one of the senior people there, and he said they were originally classified at TSSCI. And my question to him was, what's TSSCI about these? They're an iPhone literally off the vacapes. That's not TSSCI. So they're overclassified, and as soon as they do that, they go in a vault, and then you all have to look for them.
Yeah, so with the overclassification, that may be one way. Are there other ways that the DoD or intelligence agencies are keeping this information from the American people or even from Congress?
This guy's talking about the Phoenix Lights. We've got alien bodies to talk about.
Not encouraging reporting. If the problem is not something that can be measured, it's not something that's going to be fixed.
Okay, very good. Well, I'm out of time, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's talk about reporting procedures more.
First of all, without objection, Representative Nick Langworthy of New York has waived on the subcommittee for purpose of questioning witnesses at today's subcommittee hearing. And then we go to Mr. Burleson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's pray that he has some good questions.
Today,
and also that it becomes better quality.
I think that's because I'm from Missouri. You've got to show me, right? With that being said, there's been a lot of things that have been said in the public, Mr. Grush, and so I want to get down to, if we can, some specifics, right? So at one point you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
Oh, don't freeze on me now.
Physically and the activity
by you or by people within.
It's a great question, Shogun.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or
not enough
non-human technology beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very clear because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed myself and my wife was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this.
What did he witness? So
I'd ask it since I have the same. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen? Have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
Thanks, AJ.
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay, and so with that being said, the made.
I bet
that
people are
is
watching. There's
intriguing to
people
me
watching.
and it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle, both relativity and quantum mechanics. And that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring.
Only a theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Occam's razor is that these aircraft, have they been identified that they are being produced by domestic, military and contractors? Is there any evidence that that's what's being recovered?
Not to my knowledge. Plus, the recoveries predate a lot of our advanced programs that I previously am witting of. So,
would it be safe to say that
probably would
there
happen.
could be a scenario today where you have an aircraft that crashes, and because it's been involved in one program from one federal
Streetlight was
agency,
out.
and but the agency that retrieves it is not aware of that program, and to them it appears alien in origin?
I mean, that's a
Definitely.
hypothetical situation. I'm not aware of any historical situation that would match that you described. So
You're not aware. It has
Yeah,
not
talk
happened
about
that
various
you're aware of.
ways
That I'm
they
aware
seem to crash. Why?
Back.
Some of it has to do with the
Several
Earth's
months ago, my office
electromagnetic
received a
field.
protected disclosure from Eglin Air Force Base indicating
Apparently.
there was a UAP incident that required my attention. I sought a briefing regarding see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor, and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded
Hey, you never know, man.
access to all of the flight crew. Initially, not afforded access and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a
Man, this
discussion
is
about how
glitchy
authorities flow in
AF.
the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did
Yeah, that's
meet
what
with
I'm
one
wondering,
member of the
Mr.
flight crew who
Legendary.
took the image.
Is that's
The
the
image
juicy
was of
thing that's come
something
out of
that
this meeting?
I am not able
He was
to
asked
attach
about
to any
aliens
human
harming
capability,
people, and he
either
talks
from the
about
United
something
States or from
disturbing
any of
he
our
and his wife
adversaries.
saw.
And I'm somewhat informed
So
on the
did
matter, having
Brush and his
served on
wife see
the Armed
the
Services
aliens
Committee for
harming
7
somebody
years, having
in a
served
ship?
on the committee that oversees
What?
DARPA and advanced technologies for
What?
several
That's
years.
crazy.
When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down. He said that his FLIR system malfunctioned and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national
That's
security
right.
side.
He's
You
got
can go
everything
back
he
to the history
needs.
of things showing up
Look at
in
that
certain
swamp
areas and
gas.
disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it. And the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
Definitely.
And how should we
Definitely.
think
Sean
about
is everywhere.
4 craft moving in a very clear
The other Sean.
formation, equidistant?
Both Seans.
from
You're both
one
everywhere.
another,
One for good, one for evil.
in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system. And that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page.
Who's
I would like
whispering
to add,
in his ear?
whoever
Is that the
Congressman,
IG?
there's small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience,
You got a
the
point,
best
man.
thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people. And that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of an oversight committee.
Sounds about right. Probably a seagull.
Ms. Mace?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to our witnesses who are testifying today. I want to thank each of you for being here to discuss a topic of grave importance
Okay,
to our
if
national
this was
security.
a drinking game, when they
Earlier
mentioned skiff and how we need to talk about this in a
my
skiff,
home state of North
I would be
Carolina.
dead by now.
Since the Roswell incident in 1947, many Americans have wondered about the
This
dangers of
Mace, what a
unknown
name.
objects crisscrossing our
Sounds like a
skies, whether these are
superhero,
UAPs or
supervillain.
weather phenomena, advanced technology from
Balloons, it's
American
all
Ally, or any
balloons.
out of this world. So my first question, I have several questions, and if we can just be quick on these first two, I'm going to ask each of you the same question, and then I'll get to
Snappy,
each of you
snappy, quick,
individually.
quick.
The first one, when you reported your experiences with a UAP, did any of you face any repercussions with your superiors, yes or no?
No.
No. I've actually never seen anything personally, believe it or not. So.
All right.
What did you
And
and your wife
do,
see?
do you believe there's an active
Ocean gas.
within our government to deny existence of UAPs, yes or no?
I don't have an answer to that.
As previously stated publicly, yes.
I think previously with like Project Blue Book, yes, but currently I don't speak for the United States government.
Okay, thank you.
So did
I
Grush
have
and
a
his
few
wife see
questions.
something like a
Great.
video or something? What did they see that was so alarming that had to do with aliens harming people?
This is an approximation based off of my personal experience speaking with a number of pilots, but I would estimate we're somewhere near 5% reporting perhaps.
So like
Gotta be
95%
yes.
basically don't report seeing UAPs.
That's just my personal estimate.
I'm in Texas
In
myself.
the
We don't
incident
have
off
a lot of
Virginia Beach,
swamps.
do you believe it a danger to your aircraft seriously after it was reported?
Absolutely.
A few questions for Mr. Favor. As an expert naval aviator, have you ever seen an object that looked and moved like the Tic Tac UAP?
No.
Did the Tic Tac UAP move in such a way that defied the laws of physics?
The way we understand them, yes.
Many dismiss UAP reports as classified weapons testing by our own government, but in your experience as a pilot, does our government typically test advanced weapon systems right next to multi-million-dollar jets without informing our pilots?
No, we have test ranges for that.
Excellent question.
It took over 15 years for your encounter with the Tic Tac to be declassified. Do you feel there was a good reason to prevent lawmakers from having access to this footage?
No, I just think it was ignored when it happened and it just sat somewhere in a file. Never got reported.
In a drawer. It happens a lot up here. Shocker. Mr. Grush, a couple of questions for you too, sir, this morning.
I like her.
What percentage of UAP do you feel are adequately investigated by the U.S. government of the 5% that are reported?
I can only speak for my personal leadership over at NGA. I tried to look at every report that came through that I could triage. So,
do you believe that officials at the highest levels of our national security apparatus have unlawfully withheld information from Congress and subverted our oversight authority?
there are certain elected leaders that had more information that I'm not, they've shared with certain Gang of Eight members or et cetera, but certainly I would not be surprised.
Okay. You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
I like her a lot.
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Yeah. I'm getting blue balls here.
Okay, I can't ask. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Ah!
Okay.
Seriously, if I was doing a shot every time he said skip, I would
What
be
agency,
by now.
sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
She's amazing. I love her. Ms. Mays, why have I never heard of her
Now we have
before?
Mr. Langworthy's here. Okay.
Yeah, she was like, she and Representative Luna.
I'd like to thank
And even
all
AOC
of
had
the
a couple
witnesses
good
for being
questions.
here today.
All right, come on, you can do it. You can do it. Don't freeze. I've got to learn to juggle for all these freezings to be entertaining. Yeah, no. Okay, well, anyway, we're getting some good stuff out of this, but what do you guys think David Grush meant when he, I mean, it was kind of glitching, but he was asking a question.
Loading Tic-Tac video that you engaged with on November 14th, 2004. Can you briefly talk about why you were off the coast of San Diego that day?
Yeah, we were at a work with all the battle groups. So we integrate the ships with the carrier, the air wing with the carrier, and we start working. So we were doing an air-to-air defense to hone not only our skills, but those of the USS
Questions better be going somewhere.
2 weeks. The problem was that there was never manned aircraft airborne when they were tracking them. And this was the first day. And unfortunately, we were the ones airborne and went and saw it.
Do you remember the weather that
He
day?
loves it.
cloudy or windy or anything out of the ordinary on the Pacific coast?
It was actually, if you're familiar with San Diego, it was a perfect day, light winds, no white caps, clear skies, not a cloud. It was, for flying, it was the best.
Now, is it true that you saw, in your words, a 40-foot flying tic-tac shaped object?
That's correct. Or for some people that can't know what a Tic Tac is, it's a giant flying propane tank.
Fair enough. Did this object
Okay,
come
Jane,
up
that's
on
one of the
radar
earliest
or
sight- one of the
interfere
early
with your
sightings
radar
described a
or
similar
the
object.
USS Princeton?
The Princeton tracked it, the Nimitz tracked it, the E2 tracked it. We never saw it on our radars. Our fire control radars never picked it up. The other airplane that took the video did get it on a radar. As soon as it tried to lock it, it jammed the radar, spit the lock, and he rapidly switched over to the targeting pod, which you can do in the F-18.
From what you saw that day and what you've seen on video, did you see any source of propulsion from the flying object, including on any potential thermal scans from your aircraft?
No, there's none. There's no IR plume coming out. And Chad, who took the video, went through all the EO, which is black and white TV, and the IR modes, and there's no visible signs of propulsion. It's just sitting in space at 20,000 feet.
In your career, have you ever seen a propulsion system that creates no thermal
Hey,
exhaust?
No.
Can you describe how the
I literally
aircraft
walked
maneuvered?
away from the computer for like 30
Abruptly,
seconds, and I came back, and it like
very
it was gone.
determinate.
It was gone.
Knew
I was
exactly what
logged
it was
out,
doing.
all
It
that
was aware of
stuff.
our
So
process.
how,
It had acceleration rates.
how
and
long
it
was
was
we out?
It's been
matching
super
our speed
glitchy
and
since you've been gone.
no
It's
time
been
Now,
stuttering
if the
and
fastest
stopping
plane
and
on Earth was trying to do
freezing.
these maneuvers that you saw, would it be
hopefully it
capable of doing that?
No, not even close.
gets better.
And just to confirm, this object had no wings, correct?
No wings.
Now, was the aircraft that you were
It's
flying,
actually
was it
going
armed?
better now. Maybe something
No,
about
never
you
felt
being
threatened
logged out
at all.
made it act wonky. I
If
don't
the
know.
aircraft was
It
armed,
started
you
right when
believe
you
that
left.
your aircraft or
Now
any
it's
aircraft
Unless
in
the
position
AOC thing.
of the United States
She actually
could have
answered a
shot the
couple of the
Tic Tac
questions.
down.
She wasn't bad.
I'd say no, just on the performance
All
it
right,
just left.
I'm just gonna
in a-
cycle
in a
through
split
these.
second.
It looks like that we have a problem here that needs further investigation.
Oh my God.
Yes.
In your belief, is this
Wait,
flying
that's where that
Tic Tac,
reference. They
is
actually
is it
said
capable
that in a
of
congressional hearing.
being
No. I'm the one
product
that
of
said
any
I'm getting
other
blue
nation
ball
on the
from
earth?
this.
No, I actually said, like I said earlier, I think it defies current material science and the ability to develop that much propulsion. And I know there's been some physicists that have done calculations.
Yeah,
how
this is
beyond
only the
anything that
beginning.
we have.
Yeah, good point.
Well, either the United
Don't
States has
laugh
the
at a
adversary
man's blue balls. It's not
here
right.
in this world that we don't know, or we really have some serious investigations to do. I really appreciate you
Still
being
cool.
here.
Still cool.
Is there anything else about the November 14th, 2004 incident that you think is
I know, right?
important for this committee to know that you haven't been asked here today?
No, it's been said it's probably the most credible
About the
UFO
stinky
sighting in
food
history
there.
based on all the sensors that were tracking it. And then for us to get visual and to go against the naysayers that it's something on the screen or whatever. I mean, there's 4 sets of human eyeballs. We're all very credible. Of the 6 of us that were involved in the thing, including the video, every one of us is going to do 20 plus years in the military in very responsible positions. So I'd say the world needs to know that. It's
I
not a
mean,
joke.
Thank you very
I'm
much for your
glad that
testimony
he's
here
there. I'm
today
glad
for
they're
all
getting
of
their
you,
day in
and I
court,
yield
but
back, Mr. Chairman.
we've got alien bodies to talk about.
Thank you, Mr.
Or in
Chairman.
Russia's
Thank
case,
you
not
all
to
for
talk
being
about.
here and the
To
courage
say we need to talk about it in
come
a
forward
private,
and
secure
again, the
setting.
sacrifice that each of you have made.
Well, he does have to say that. Like,
I serve on
literally,
the
if he
National
reveals
Security
I
Subcommittee
know
for
that he's
Financial
being honest
Services
about that,
Committee,
but
so I
that is
really
so
want to stay in the
frustrating.
national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, we probe.
Well, maybe they could ask
their
him questions in
capabilities.
such a
We
way
look
that he
for
can answer it
weaknesses,
without
and we
that.
collect that data,
like
that
Lou
reconnaissance
does, he
for
finds a
in the event we
workaround.
need it in the future.
He can't talk about alien
For
technology.
each of you, yes or no
He can
question,
talk about
based
what
off
if
of your
we
own
found a
experience
747
or the
King
data
Tut's
that
tomb?
you've been privy to,
You know,
is there
Dave
any indication
learned
that
to
these
do something like that.
UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information? Mr. Graves?
Yes.
My echo's gone.
Grush?
This is great.
Fair assessment. Yeah.
Mr. Fravor?
Very possible.
Again, in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Rush?
Yes.
Fravor?
Definitely.
Is it possible that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems?
Yes.
Yes. Possible.
Do you
Possible is the
feel,
best
based off of your
answer.
experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States? Mr. Graves?
Potentially.
Yes, sir, potentially.
Same answer, potentially.
Yeah, I'd say
Favor.
definitely, potentially.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, in the event that your encounters had become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Is based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any indication that the Department of Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that in a public setting.
And
No.
could you do it
They're
in
involved.
a secure
Their name
setting?
comes up a lot.
Yes.
Mr. Fravor.
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility to maintain oversight and be aware of these activities so that, if appropriate, we take action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular Mr. Grush, talk to us in a skiff. And if that access is denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield the remainder of my time to my fellow colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ogles,
Yeah.
for the great
Like it.
questions, brother. Mr. Grush, I might have asked this before, but I
not
want to
that
make
I
sure.
heard.
Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's
It was
possibly
glitching,
been
I think,
injured
when they were
working
talking
on
about that.
legacy UAP reverse engineering?
They did
Yes.
ask about
Okay.
restraining orders.
How were they injured?
Commercial
Was it-
pilots.
Is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people talk about Havana syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
How do you think we ought to handle UAP whistleblower complaints like yours in the future?
Yeah, there was some issue with mine. So, PPD 19 process, it goes to the Intel committees, either through PPD 19 or ICD 120. There's not a good way for the Intelligence Community Inspector General to provide that to other committees. And I asked my information to be sent to the House and Senate Armed Services Committee because there are Title 10 equities at play, but there was no smooth process to do so. Yeah.
That's a trash can. Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Personally, yes.
Do you know any that would be willing to testify if there were protections for them?
Certainly closed door and assurances that breaking their NDA, they're not going to get administratively punished for so. Yeah.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're going to do something a little bit out of the ordinary here. We're going to give 3 people a chance at an additional 3 minutes. So Mr. Burchett, do you want to keep going?
Why don't you come back to me, Mr. Chairman? Ms. Luna, if she's on, is she on that list?
Sure.
Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record an article by News Nation, and it follows Mr. Grush's full interview for the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. Mr. Grush, why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, yeah, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be, yeah.
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
Yeah, you're referring to actual public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, the Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty, publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article, also Situation 2, which is in the previously classified NSA archive. What I would recommend, and I tried to get access, but I got a wall of silence at the White House, was those specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to a further investigation using those publicly available information.
Thank you. And then my last question with 51 seconds remaining. You mentioned white collar crimes potentially being taking place in regards to a cover up. Can you please elaborate?
I have concerns based on the interviews I conducted under my official duties of potential violations of the federal acquisition regulations, the FAR.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I yield the remainder of my time.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Raskin for 3 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I thank the witnesses for their endurance and service today. Mr. Fravor, you've described your episode in detail now, and you call it the most credible UFO sighting in history. But I wonder, was this the first time that you encountered a UFO or a UAP in 2004?
Yes.
And what was your general
I think
attitude
we
or
called it at the very beginning. We said
perspective
there's no way
on
there's going to be
the
other-
UFO discussion before that?
Can we assume there are no other witnesses?
I never felt
And
that
you and
we
I
were
kind of
alone
at the
with
very
all the
beginning
planets
said
out
there's no
there,
way.
but God
Yeah, I was hoping, but I always
wasn't
knew it was a
watching
long
History
shot.
Channel, MUFON and all that.
And
Oh.
have you had experiences or encounters since that happened?
No.
And so have you formed any general conclusions about what you think you experienced then?
I'm going to have a snack.
Yes, I think what we experienced was, like I said, well beyond the material science and the capabilities that we had at the time, that we have currently, or that we're going to have in the next 10 to 20 years.
Very good. Mr. Grush, you've been able to answer in great detail.
I
on
wouldn't make a
certain
claim
questions,
like
and then
that
other
under
things you
oath,
say you're not
that we
able
we wouldn't have
to respond to.
technology
Can you
in
just
10 to 20
explain
years.
where you're drawing the line?
Old words.
What's the basis for that?
Yeah, based on my DOPSR security review and what they've determined that is unclassified.
I see. So you're answering any questions that just call upon your knowledge of unclassified questions, but anything that relates to classified matters you're not commenting on in this context.
In an open session, but happy to participate in a closed session at the right level. Yeah.
Okay. And Mr. Graves, you've said that there are dozens of fellow pilots, military pilots. Are there also commercial pilots who've encountered the same kind of sightings that you described before?
They are similar. Commercial pilots have less range and less sensors to be able to reach out and look for objects over wide swaths of airspace. And so pilots are seeing them, commercial pilots are seeing them, and they're typically closer, and the range of what they're seeing is pretty large.
What is the most vivid, concrete sighting with the naked eye of the objects that you described before, the cube-like objects?
Certainly. I think the most vivid sighting of that would have been near midair that we had at the entrance to our working area. One of these objects was completely stationary at the exact entrance to our working areas, not only geographically, but also at altitude. So it was right where all the jets are going, essentially, on the eastern seaboard. The two aircraft flew within about 50 feet of the object, and that was a very close visual sighting.
And you were in one of the aircraft
I was not. I was there when the pilot landed. He canceled the mission after, and I was there. He was in the ready room with all his gear on, with his mouth open. And I asked him what the problem was, and he said he almost hit one of those darn things.
He said he was 50 feet away from it,
Yes, sir.
and his description of the object was consistent with the description you gave us before.
A dark gray or a black cube inside
That's
of
a fair
clear
point.
sphere.
Inside of a clear sphere.
I love that description. I actually
with
showed
no
a video
self-evident
a month ago,
propulsion
the
system.
three objects.
No
that
wings,
kinda
no
fit
iron
that
energy
general
coming off of the vehicle, nothing tethering it to the ground. And that was primarily what we were experiencing out there.
I'm over
Nice to
time.
meet you,
Thank you
sir.
very much for your service, and I yield back to Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Mr. Burchett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for all three of y'all, starting with Mr. Graves. Why did you come forward on this issue?
I came forward because I felt that my colleagues did not have a way to mitigate this safety threat, and I wanted to help them. I was trained as an aviation safety officer by the Navy, and it just felt right. I felt like I had to help the folks that were still flying and dealing with this.
Mr. Grush?
Purely a sense of duty. My first sworn oath when I was a cadet 18 years ago, and I still uphold that even out of uniform.
Commander?
I was pestered by a friend, and I asked why, and he said, "You're the one person that they can't discredit, and you'll add credibility to the New York Times article." And so after about 6 times, I said, "Okay."
Honest.
Yeah. This town isn't made, unfortunately, by people like y'all. We thank y'all. And I do want to also thank the people in the audience and the people that are watching this that can't be, people all over the world that have kept this issue alive. You've endured criticism and derogatory remarks, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. And so God bless y'all. Thank y'all so much. We really appreciate you guys and gals. That's why we need term limits. Y'all keep clapping, us politicians just keep talking. So let me ask y'all, how can the public contribute to UAP reporting? And what avenues you think are available to the public to report these sightings?
Well, right now, I don't think there is a lot of public options for every man to be able to report on this. I think even for professionals that have sensor data that are seeing these on a regular basis, they're still hesitant to come forward. And so for the general public, I think encouraging the conversations that we're having today, looking for technology solutions that can be distributed so that objective data can be gathered is the first place to go.
Mr. Grush?
I'll just touch on the whistleblower side of it. I do encourage, current and former military, intelligence community, and industry contractors to come forward in a legal way, either through the IC or DoD or whatever the cognizant IGs are, to lead, join me in this discussion.
Commander, and
I'll be right back.
I guess I should say this for the record. My daddy was United States Marine Corps, 1st Marine Division. So,
Hoorah.
yes, sir. He was old school. Him and Chesty Puller on Peleliu. So thank you,
wow.
brother.
Wow.
Yes, sir. I'm not anything like my daddy. He was incredible. I'm very mediocre to say the least, but go
You
ahead.
seem to be doing fine.
Yeah.
For me, I was an accident investigator, so the biggest thing to learn, and I think that witnesses need to do is, one, don't try and make the fish bigger than it was. Stick to the facts, write it down, and don't speculate what you think it is because it will sway your decision. Just write the facts down. We can get all the facts together and we can start to investigate and get a real honest story instead of it was this big.
Thank you all, and I want to thank everybody. We made history today. Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you much, Mr. Garcia.
Thank you. I know now we're going to be making some closing remarks, and so I just wanted to say a few things. First, to our witnesses, I want to thank all of you for being here with us today. I know that it takes a lot of courage. You're telling really important information to this committee, and I just want to thank you also for all three of you, your service to our country. I also want to just note that today's hearing was both important but also serious, and I want to thank our subcommittee chairman, Mr. Grothman, I think for running a very fair and substantive hearing. I do want to thank the committee staff on both sides for the amount of work that it took to put this hearing in place, and certainly to all the members that have been involved in this issue prior to the hearing. I also want to note for our witnesses and for the public that I'm a freshman member of Congress and I've only been here for 7 months, but this is by far the most bipartisan conversation and discussion that I have seen happen in the Congress. And I think that a topic of this significance as it relates to our national security, as it relates to information that we're trying to gather for the American public does bring people together, and I think that's been really great to see. I think it's also important to note for the public, today in our hearing, we had on our side also both our full ranking member, which is Mr. Raskin, and our vice ranking member, which is Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, both here at our hearing. I think it shows the importance and seriousness that our side of the aisle is taking to this important hearing, but also to the broader issue as it relates to working with our Republican counterparts on this committee. I want to additionally add that I think, and I think it's really important that we have and continue these discussions and these hearings. Clearly, there's a lot of information that we don't know, but it's also very clear that we have to continue our investigation and accountability on asking the right questions and ensuring that they're part of the public record. One thing that was important today is some folks might wonder, why are we asking questions that might already be out there or that have been asked before? It's important that they're asked and put into the public record as it relates to this committee. And so I want to thank you for, answering some questions multiple times. I know not just in maybe meetings you had with some members, but also here in the public. Let me also just add an additional note that it's important also that our friends in the media and those that are not just reporting on this hearing, but that have reported on this topic and that may in the future, the media has an important role in this process. And it's very important that the media engages, does independent investigation.
Certainly does.
And
It's
reports
called
on not just what
misinformation
happened today,
and
but what they see independently as what is happening around UAPs in the broader community. That is also an important public benefit that we have in trying to get the information and the facts as it relates to this. Let me also just say finally that as a teacher and an educator and a longtime teacher and researcher, that I also really believe in following facts, in doing your homework, and in making sure that you follow science as we try to get as most information as possible. And so I want to thank you all for agreeing to do that today. Transparency is a cornerstone of government. We live in a vast galaxy, a lot of unanswered questions, and thank you all for being here today. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd like to one more time thank Mr. Burchett and Ms. Luna for bringing this to our attention. It's a topic that has interested me since I was in school. It was a very illuminating hearing. Obviously, I think several of us are going to look forward to getting some answers in a more confidential setting. I assume some legislation will come out of this. Sure.
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I need to compliment the folks in my office that did a lot of the work on this. Rachel and Noah sitting behind me here. They're very quiet and humble, but without them, this thing would not have come off like it did. So I apologize.
Thank you. I think we're going to want to look into what we can do to make more of this information public. I think there's certainly a time period after which it should always be made public, and people have been concerned about these issues, like I said, since I was in high school. But in any event, I'd like to thank everybody who was here, sticking through the entire hearing. Without objection, the members will have 5 legislative days to submit materials and to submit additional written questions for the witnesses, which will be forwarded to the witnesses for their response. If there's no further business, without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.
All right. Well, there you go. I am very jealous of their skiff. They are going to have a juicy skiff if they ever get in a skiff. But yeah,
nothing. The only thing that I picked up that was anything new was these restraining orders filed by private corporations against the reports of commercial pilots. Have you heard? You heard that one, right?
I heard that. That was really interesting, and it makes sense. They're trying to suppress it, I guess, not to induce fear of flying, unless there's some other directive, which there could well be. If this is a general cover-up that goes across different platforms, including the private sector, and to some extent we know it does. Does it extend into the commercial airlines? I mean, why not? That would be a logical place for it to extend to.
Right.
But it could simply be not to make people afraid of flying. So it could be, I don't know which one it is, but it's one of them. But there was also another juicy thing that came out of it. Something that David Grush saw with his wife. He was asked in the context, and it was really glitching at the time. This may have been after you left, and it was really glitching during that interval. But he was asked something about the non-humans harming humans, and he said something about something that he and his wife saw that was very alarming in answer to that question. Later, he said he had never seen a UFO himself, so it wasn't that he and his wife saw a UFO zapping somebody, but maybe they met a witness that was harmed by UFOs, or they saw a video or a photo. Something happened there where they saw some evidence of UFOs harming people, and it was with his wife, and that was the context of it, was UFOs harming people. So I would love more answers on that incident, whatever.
So
that
what
was.
exactly did he say? That like him and his
It was
wife?
glitching really badly. It was, but he said he and his wife had seen something alarming in answer to the question about non-humans harming humans.
Did he say anything about what his wife's background was? Like, was she an Air Force officer? Or?
It was like I say, it was glitching very badly at that time, and that was like the only fragment I was able to get out of it.
Well, if it was that incendiary, I'm sure it'll be on News Nation. It won't be.
Well, I doubt he even said anything else. I mean, every answer he gave was, we need to talk about it in a skiff. And while I'm sure that's true, I think that he needs to find ways to talk about it without talking about it. You'll see. If a pilot reports on a UFO and later crashes a plane with customers aboard, the airline could have a lawsuit in hand. Yeah.
Yeah. On the flip side, though, if he reports a UFO and then later crashes the plane, the airline might throw him in front of the bus and say, this guy's crazy. That's why he's incompetent and crashed the plane.
Right.
Which would further reduce or increase the stigma of reporting these things.
Yeah. Other than that, it was just all a bunch of stuff that we'd heard before, pretty much. I'm going to have to kind of dig through David Grush's responses to see if there's anything that I missed in there. He talked in jargon a lot.
By the way, did you see the number of people watching just like doubled in the last as soon as that thing ended?
Oh, really? They all want to know what we're saying now.
They want to know what your take is, Jack. What's your take? So anything? Okay, so we should kind of independently talk about what our take is. But before that, just to sum things up, we said the two new things so far. There might be other new things. The first is the fact that private corporations have filed restraining orders against pilots reporting something. And then the second question was that there was some horrifying incident related to David Grush and he said his wife?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I thought
he said something that he and his you want me to answer again?
Was it his wife or his partner? Because I thought he was
wife.
I thought he was gay. Okay. All right. There's a lot of disinformation out there right now.
Who is pushing? Or why is the government allowing them if there is no smoking gun? Well, okay, so that's the thing, right? Shogun Order. We don't know what the smoking gun is. We know that David Grush delivered classified proof and evidence to the IG into Congress. So there may well be a smoking gun, and that's why they are taking him so seriously. I'm inclined to think there is a smoking gun and that they've seen it.
There's smoking guns everywhere. It's just it's been suppressing.
Right,
I mean, you have in 1967 they shut down 10 Minutemen nuclear. Sorry, there were 30 overall. 10 ICBMs they just shut down remotely when the thing was 60 feet underground with cabling, triply protected against electromagnetic pulse. and they were still able to shut these things. They're all separately linked. There's tons of evidence out there. The phenomena is real. Like there's no debating it, discussing it. The question is what is it and what's our relationship with it, right?
Right. Exactly. Well, that's what I always talk about. I'm not as interested in proof of the phenomenon as I am interested in why it's here and how better we can interact with it and what that means for humanity. But David Grush also mentioned, what was that?
Oh,
I thought he was gay. What?
No, I thought he had a partner. I didn't think he had a wife. I didn't think he was heterosexual.
Yeah, I didn't know anything
That's
about
all.
his personal life.
Yeah, that was all. No judgment on it. I just didn't.
Yeah,
there's stuff going out there that about the opposite thing. So it's just misinformation. Whether or not that helps or harms him, I don't know.
I mean, there may be gay couples that refer to themselves as husband and wife. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I thought in the current zeitgeist, I thought that was a reason why he was even more unassailable, to be honest with you. But
okay, all right. It'd probably help him if you were.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, that's why I thought that was the case.
Right.
But yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he's obviously.
But he did talk about reprisals that were brutal. And he, not just with him.
What were Getz's UFO details? Because they said those were new as well. There's something about Mexico or.
Yeah, well, he and was it something different from the one that he and Burchett went to with Luna, and they were, not allowed to see it. Matt was able to see some of it. Hey, Jack. I know, right? Well, fortunately, I'm not waiting for the government to say it for me to believe it.
Right.
But you have a great point. You can't believe what the government says, but a lot of people do. A lot of people won't believe in this stuff until, the president comes out on the White House lawn and says, hey, they're here. My fellow Americans, we are not alone. I know a lot of people that fall into that category. And so that's why this official sort of disclosure and an official sort of smoking gun is so important. For us, having dug into this, we've seen many smoking guns, right? But the average Joe Q public, hasn't. They haven't dug into it. They're not going to believe it until the president says it. So, and that's why this congressional hearing was also so important. But I don't feel like they ever really went there. They did talk about crash retrievals a little bit. They talked about reverse engineering a little bit. A lot of it was buried in jargon. David Grush gave very short answers, and he didn't seem comfortable talking and more expounding on these things in any detail. But they didn't ever ask him like point blank, is there a UFO crash retrieval program? Like in very direct words that he could reply and then expound on an answer. He touched on it. Yes, we're exploiting these objects, something like that. But he never went into any detail. And this was really a great opportunity to have done that. So I'm disappointed that they didn't really make it as dumbed down as they could have, and really, had that soundbite. They really needed that soundbite. Are there UFOs? Is there a UFO crash retrieval program?
Are we not alone? Like you go even simpler than that. Like
right.
Mr. Parafreak.
So I really feel like they missed the opportunity to get some powerful sound bites that would have gone a lot further than I think that they're going to, disclosure isn't going to make a huge progress with this hearing, I don't think.
Oh, that's it. By the way, WISO, I think it's like WSO. It's like Weapons Systems Officer or something like that. It's the guy who maintains the weapons on an F-16 or sorry, F-18. Okay, what else do we have? Okay. So what else? So there's three things, right? There's the restraining order comment. There's the comment about the diamond formation of UFOs that Getz talked about. And then there was the revelation about Grush and his wife observing or seeing something terrifying. Was there anything else that we missed?
Yeah, there was talk. I forget which congressperson mentioned it, but they talked about a No, he did. He did confirm that there was a reverse engineering project, but he didn't go into any details. It was very, and there wasn't that good soundbite. That's what we needed for the media. That's what I'm talking about. Yes, he did mention it, but very quickly and briefly, and without the good soundbite that we needed. So that's what when I say he didn't really talk about it, that's what I'm referring to, is the sound.
Okay, so but there's 4 things that are kind of new, but they're not that earth shattering.
But there was one thing that a congressperson talked about, and that was a giant UFO.
That's the diamond formation with the orb, the giant.
Oh, that's
orb in
okay.
the
The formation was the giant UFO part of a formation? I missed that part.
Yeah, apparently there was a Moon Man actually covered it, because I definitely missed it. Hold on, I'm going to find what he wrote. This is where I got that.
Diamond formation of UFOs with a giant glowing. Okay, so the orb was the giant UFO. Okay, interesting. Wow, that's a hell of
We're
a
actually looks like a giant red. Well, we're playing a little bit of telephone, but I'm sure it'll all come together. Regardless, there's this massive sighting with this diamond shaped thing, and oh, okay, so that's like a fifth. That's like a fifth thing, right? Yes, there were 2 cases. One was the 100-yard UFO. The other was formation of many.
Oh, and by the way, we have to do a channel break. Please subscribe to Through the Glass Darkly and Cosmic Road.
Cosmic Road.
And
Absolutely.
Smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos.
You know what this tells us? That people are coming to you and me. They're not coming to us to like watch our commentary during the hearing, but they're coming to hear our takeaways from the hearing. So
yeah, no, I mean, I love it. Bring it, whatever brings people in. I think that's fabulous.
All right. So we kind of have the new stuff. What's your takeaway on how this hearing went? Like, what did it achieve or not achieve?
Well, it didn't get the juicy sound bites that I was really hoping for, when it just says in very blunt language and it goes into at least a little detail. For example, in the interview with Ross Coulthart, David Grush did mention going into finding at least one of these UFOs in an archaeological setting, right? So, he didn't go into any detail, nothing in this hearing. It was all very matter of fact, very short, jargon heavy responses. So I was very disappointed in the level of responses we were getting. I don't know if that's just David Grush being very uncomfortable or very, or else it's the representatives not asking the questions in a way that would allow him to give, better answers. But so although we got some bare bones answers that did directly address reverse engineering and crash retrievals, there was no good sound bite to really go to the press with on that. And there was no details provided, not even to the level that he provided Ross in the interview. So I was disappointed in the detail that we were getting and in the sound bites that we were getting, but the bare information was there.
Okay, so here's my takeaway, because one problem I have, or one gap I have, is, Jack, you and I have done an incredible amount of research in a very brief amount of time in terms of understanding the phenomena, but the average human being has 100 IQ. A lot of them are just struggling to survive. Like, they're worried about paying the rent and things like that. And they listen to the government. They believe what they see on CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. They believe everything. They believe what their congressman or congresswoman is saying. So while I don't think there was anything earth-shattering, and I would have loved to go into much more detail, like for instance with crash retrieval teams, which agency operates these things, right? I once heard on Coast to Coast AM, if you go to the actually YouTube channel, there's a recent episode where there's some call-in, and granted he's a call-in, but he talks about being involved in a crash retrieval operation, He's former Ranger Regiment guy, and he had joined the SOG, which is the Special Operations Group of the CIA. It belongs to the Special Activities Center. And he claimed that he was kind of on a mission, but it was like a cordon, right? He didn't know it was being retrieved, but something was being retrieved somewhere, So that's the closest I've ever heard of anything. Like, I want to know which organizations are conducting these crash retrievals. Are they military? Are they CIA? Are they a mixture of both? Does Delta go in? Do the PJs go in from the Air Force? Like, that's the kind of detail that I want to know. But you'll never get that in a congressional hearing. The point of a congressional hearing is to raise the issue for everyone else, right? In order to kind of get it out into the broader consciousness of the population. And while I don't think we got anything that would satisfy you or I or many in the audience, I think it was successful in the first step, that it helped kind of tap at the stigma a little bit more, in terms of, or not tap at, but like reduce the stigma a little bit, and at least get people to start to think about these things. They're also slowly pushing forward the idea that, there's still some use of reliance on the terms ETs and extraterrestrials and things like that. But I think they're also subtly seeding the population with the idea of non-human intelligences, right? Which is either they don't know what they are, or that maybe they're not coming from the stars, or maybe some of them come from the stars. Maybe some of them come from another vibrational reality, another dimension, wormholes from, somewhere else. And so I think there's a number of things that are going on. They're also seeding the crash retrieval narrative. So at the end of the day, I wouldn't say it was, I'm personally disappointed by the amount of information, but I'm not disappointed in, if you ask the question, what did they hope to achieve, or what would you hope to possibly achieve with this hearing? And just to seed the consciousness with a little bit more of a willingness to accept that our greater reality is much more than it seems, I think it was successful.
Yeah, it was successful in that. I was hoping that we would get something more along the lines of the Russ Coulthard interview, with the level of responses from Dave Grush, and we weren't getting that. So I'm disappointed in that. I think those would have provided better sound bites and better information to be put into the record. How do I see Muse Nation?
Muse Nation's live. Well,
No, you're right. Because Jonathan, no, you're 100% right. Dave's comments, everyone had to be cleared to be released. And there is a lot, I'm sure, that wasn't cleared for release. So we're just getting the dregs.
Oh, pull up live coverage of News Nation. Let's see if we can. Let me see if I can find that.
I think that may be Sean's kid.
Yeah. It's me. So News Nation. Hold on. Let me go to YouTube first, and then News Nation. Let me just search. I mean, I think you probably have to have a subscription, but it doesn't hurt to check. The question is there anything? There must be like a live feed. Hold on. Just go straight to live. Well, it looks like it was streamed 18 minutes.
What are they talking about on News Nation?
It's just the hearing.
Well, I know, but I mean specifically, why are we showing them?
Oh, you're asking the audience, not me.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, I'm not touching that comment.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I don't know where that was coming from, Leviathan.
Yeah, I'm just gonna let that go. All right. I think he's just gonna continue to dismiss it. It was oh, you're probably talking about the actual hearing. Yeah, they have like a 2 hour and 20 something minute hearing thing on their site. Yeah, I saw that. The problem is if you stream that, I'd rather stream the GOP one, just because it's a government, it's associated with a government entity, and they're very unlikely to do like a copyright strike or something like that. If you do it with News Nation, you could argue it's newsworthy, but they're just more likely to follow up with something like that. Yeah, okay, we saw that. He lied to Congress. Like, how do you get around that?
Right.
How do you get around that? No,
Well,
granted, he didn't.
there's no anomalous craft doing anything funky up there. Y'all are all smoking the
There's an
the
after show
ganja.
thing. Yeah, I'm looking for it. Could somebody post a link down there, and maybe I can just, because I'm looking at latest, and it was streamed like on live. It was streamed 19 minutes ago. Yeah, everything else seems like. I don't have a subscription to it, so there might be something that's going on live now, but I don't have a subscription. So, all right. So you were annoyed, going back to the other discussion we were having, you were annoyed that Grush couldn't say anything.
Yeah, well, I didn't expect him to give any really juicy details, but I expected him to at least give the sort of responses at the level that he did with Ross in the interview, where he was able to go into a little more detail, have, a few complete sentences without saying, well, we need to talk about that in a skiff. I get it. He can only say so much, but he was able to
actually,
Ross.
Yeah, he can actually say more in a media interview because he's not sworn under oath, right? But he can't say that much either. But under sworn testimony, he has to be super, even if he could say more, he has to be super circumspect. Because again, if you believe the Richard Dolan theory that it's a factional fight, if you're up against David Grush, right, and you're the kind of the secrecy group, the group that wants to keep this thing secret, you are absolutely listening to every word and tabulating every word he says and finding a way to screw him.
Yeah,
right? Where he has legal challenges and everything like that. So you also have to keep in mind what some devious person who's trying to screw somebody over, what's the worst possible thing that they could do with those words, right? And I'm sure there's enough there that they can just take things out of context and twist it, create some BS lawsuit, and just cause them problems, right?
But okay, on the flip side, to look at it from another way, David Grush has gone through hell to bring us this information. So why not make it worth it? Why not give us more information to make what he has gone through worth it? Was the level of information that he gave us today worth the trouble that he has gone through?
No.
You see what I'm saying?
But again, that it's a tactical thing. Like, this is one battle in a long campaign. So in the long run, you have to measure where we get kind of, 6 months from now, a year from now. The other thing too is the fact that we have a presidential election coming up, and things aren't really going well for the incumbent, right, in terms of corruption and approval ratings and things like that. There's going to absolutely be an incentive to hype this stuff up.
There's no corruption. What are you talking about, Sean? What?
On both sides, right? We also have a Brazilian in Congress, so let's, I'm not focusing on either side. That we have someone who's not an American in Congress, so it's.
Is that right? Who's that?
Santos. You follow that guy?
No, I haven't been following Santos.
Just look at he's highly entertaining. Like the guy lies like he breathes. It's hilarious. I'm not even going to say the political party. It's the opposite of the political party of where there's even more corruption right now. But I mean that's pretty messed up. Where you have somebody who's literally a Brazilian.
That's just so weird. I don't get that.
Just look up George Santos. Just look him up.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know. I mean, I haven't. He's Republican. Like I haven't spent any time trying to understand why he's still in Congress, but he's Brazilian.
Okay. All right. Well,
Which
I
is
like
like,
Brazil. I don't know if they should be in the American Congress, but
no, they should.
Florida says, yeah, I try not to
Yeah.
get political. I try not to get
Yeah,
political. It's
exactly.
probably,
Stay out of all I'm saying is I think everybody can agree that if you look at surveys, trust in the government is the lowest it's ever been, and it is rife with corruption. And that's my only point. I'm not trying to take sides.
no. Well, I mean, yes, you're right. You are correct.
Is he though? Oh, maybe he's born in Brazil. I can't. I haven't researched it, but I don't want to get. I fully admit that I could be completely ignorant on the topic, but yeah,
All
he's
right,
super,
back to aliens. Did George?
Yes.
But yeah, all in all, I mean, I guess you're right. I mean, this is the first step on a long journey of UFO disclosure. And, at least it was a sincere effort this time on the part of Congress, unlike the hearing with Ernst and Gillibrand before, and the one led by, was it Carson? Who was the one that led the hearing with Bray and Moultrie?
Andre Carson.
Yeah. But isn't he a representative? Isn't it? But he would have to be a senator to have led that hearing, right?
That's a good point. He was in. Yeah, you would have to be a senator,
right?
But he doesn't.
But he was there. I'm confused on that. Somebody walk me through that. So I don't quite get that, because that was in the Senate, is my understanding.
I mean, this is something that's easily knowable. So Jack, keep talking while I
Okay, all right.
Find out the answer.
But
Andre
yes,
Carson.
so yes, this was the first sincere.
Yeah, he's a representative,
right? So why was he? Because he was at that hearing with the Bray and Moultrie, right? I didn't hallucinate that, right? So
yeah, I think he was.
So what gives? How does that work?
I don't know.
Hey, I don't want to get sidetracked with congressional mechanics.
No, just get out of the politics. Like, we got to keep it narrowly focused.
Yeah. So
again,
anyway,
narrowly focused.
So
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Okay. I don't know anything about it. First illegal alien doctor and Gary Pelican from Brazil.
He claims. I think he was gay, then he wasn't gay. So I don't know. Lots of anyway, let's.
Okay, yeah, just to finish the point, yeah. So this was the first step in hopefully a long journey, actually hopefully a short journey to UFO disclosure, but a journey. It is the first step, the first sincere step, because we've had the two hearings before, but they were not sincere efforts. They were just part of the cover-up. They were just continuing what's been going on. But Tim Burchett and his enthusiasm in Luna, and they wanted a real hearing, and they got one. And it was a bipartisan hearing. We had good questions from both sides. AOC had some good questions.
Moonman is saying Santos was cured. Anyway, let's keep going.
Okay, I'm not going to go there.
No, this is not.
But anyway, so yeah, so it was a good hearing, and that. So I guess that's my ultimate takeaway. I guess is that it was a sincere hearing. It wasn't part of the cover up like the other two hearings.
Or the NASA video, like the NASA. It wasn't a hearing, but it was like a public comment.
Yeah,
which was like you had Ming the Merciless talking about we need more data. We need more data, right?
We need more data.
Yeah.
So that's my ultimate takeaway from this hearing, is that it was a sincere effort, and we did get some information about UFO crash retrievals and reverse engineering confirmed into the record, into the congressional record.
No.
They
this
didn't
is
go
about
into,
the Phoenix Lights. Yeah.
Yeah, I was annoyed by that guy. I mean, I love the Phoenix Lights case, but why are you asking David Grush about that? He doesn't have anything to do with the Phoenix Lights. Why would he have any information about that? But anyway, so
well, I don't like. Why aren't they going back all the way back to Roswell? Like, it's like it didn't happen. Like,
well, they should, right? No.
Yeah.
I mean, that ostensibly is what Arrow should be for, is to collate all this information into one place and then to release that which is releasable. I mean, that's what Arrow should be doing instead of whatever the heck Arrow is actually doing,
right?
Which is not that. It's what UFOs. And
by the way, I missed this whole thing, Jack. You got to tell me, what did AOC ask, or did the thing crap out when she was talking?
No, I was able. Well, it was pretty glitchy, honestly, but I was able to get several of her questions, and she did. She had some good, pertinent questions. Those in the chat, can you all remind me what specifically she asked about? But she did. She had some on point questions. She really did. I was pleasantly surprised, which I guess makes sense because she is, anti-establishment or whatever she's supposed to be. I think it's good to start, and for people who are hearing it for the first time, can see that we are now taking it seriously. Yeah.
I think this is neutral to positive, right? It depends. It all depends on where this goes. So if nothing happens, it was neutral. But if we get some more momentum, it's a positive. Let's see. Oh yeah, here we go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, is she the one that said if you were me, where would I go to get answers? I think that was a question that she was asked, or that she asked. And
so NASA, my understanding is NASA was invited, by the way, and then, they were, I guess somebody had a highly important Photoshop document to doctor. So
that's what Tim said. I'm unclear what that means, though. If they had arrived, does that mean they would have somebody would have been, Bill Nelson? Would he have been a witness? I don't understand in what capacity NASA would have been there if they weren't a witness.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, which organization should? I mean, it's not just which; it's multiple. It's the CIA, it's the NRO, it's the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, it's the DIA, even stuff that very few people know about, like the Intelligence Support Activity, which is kind of another kind of the military version of the CIA spooks. What else? Department of Energy, right, is an obvious one. The National Security Agency, maybe they picked up transmissions from whatever these things are, or signatures. So there's a ton of different organizations that people don't even know exist that would have information on this.
Well, that's a good point, Kick Rocks. But oversight's a big part of it, right? And so I think she was very on point with her questions. I was pleasantly surprised by AOC's questions.
Yeah, and to be fair, the subcommittee or the committee is the oversight committee, so that's fair, right?
Yeah, it's a very relevant subcommittee for this to be held in.
Oh, BBC said. Well, here's the thing: like, British intelligence published a report in 2004, 2005, 2003 that basically said UAPs are real. Like, you can look it up. It's just like it's a public document and it goes into like where they're found, what they see. So the BBC can make fun of it all they want, but the British government is on record saying it's real, like 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, Nick Pope, I think he would have a word to say about it being a conspiracy theory.
What, Nick Pope thinks it's a conspiracy?
No. I mean, Nick Pope was, he worked with the UK. Was it the I want to say Department of Defense? What was it?
Ministry of Defense.
Ministry of Defense, yeah, and yeah, he managed their rear desk. And,
or as Orwell would call it, the Ministry of Peace. What's your view of Nick Pope?
I like him. I mean, I think that he's been riding this train for a while. But he has some good things to say. He does. He's He's a very mainstream UFO researcher or whatever. He's not going to talk a lot about extra dimensionals or Bigfoot or anything like that. But he's fine. He does have an occasional good comment and a good insight.
This is a good question. Why is Elizondo kind of in the shadows?
I know, right? I would have much rather heard Lou than Ryan Graves, I love, but at the same time, Ryan is a direct experiencer.
Well, let's be honest. If Congress was running these programs, they would be 500 times worse. However, the government owes it to the populace just to say that we're not alone. Offer some details, but that's all we're asking for. Just end the stigma so that we actually have hope that humanity isn't the only thing out there, which is actually pretty horrifying.
I wish Congress were running this, because if they did, there would be some leaks. We would know some stuff. Congress could not keep a lid on this. So I wish it were run by Congress. Also, I wish it were taken out of the Department of Defense. I think that's the wrong purview, really. I mean, it makes sense that they would be there. Obviously, these objects are violating our airspace. However, approaching the phenomenon from a warlike position may not be as helpful as a political diplomatic position.
Yeah, I got the pushback a little bit on that. The question I would ask is, you have to have the right level of secrecy so that the Chinese or the Russians don't develop the technology before we do. Because if that happens,
well, you're talking about reverse engineering. That's a horse of a different color. You're right about that.
Yeah.
I'm talking specifically about just interacting with the phenomenon.
But what do you think of this about penetrating our secure? I mean, if they could penetrate our nukes in 1967, they're probably routinely doing this.
But I mean, there's so much information they could reveal without violating national security, and they don't.
Right.
So that's why I feel like the bulk of this, that's not the reverse engineered stuff, should be somewhere other than the DoD. Somewhere that would be more transparent and tell the public what the hell is going on. The DoD, that's their lips are sealed. They're not going to reveal anything that they don't have to, and they don't have to, and they're not doing it.
I'm just putting this up for 15 seconds. Okay, and just kidding.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wanted to keep it very short and sweet. It's not as the other one would have gotten us both thrown off of.
Yeah. We don't want that. We don't want that.
Although maybe I'm actually kind of worried that it'll get
I
us
know,
thrown
right?
off just the fact that it's just there.
But
well,
yeah, so I mean, I have grave concerns about this being under the DoD. Now the reverse engineering, the technical applications of it from a military point of view. Where'd you go?
You didn't lose me. I'm still here. Don't worry.
Okay. Yeah. I can totally see why some of this needs to be under the purview of the military, but a lot of it doesn't need to be under the purview of the military. A lot of this stuff can be disclosed to the public and should be disclosed to the public. But I am filling up the screen now. Hey guys, how's it going? You can see my whole study. I need my cat. Where's Baxter? Oh, there he is. I can't hear you. Hit unmute or hit mute. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, my camera just died, so that always happens. So I've done this many times. So I just it's plugged in, but it doesn't charge while it's operating for whatever reason. So now I'm using this computer camera. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm good. You guys got any questions for us? If the MJ-12 stuff is true and secret agreements to allow people to be abducted that will never get disclosed, they don't want all this. Yeah, I don't know how you disclose the abduction phenomenon. That is going to be a tricky one. I have thought about that often. How do you, even if they didn't want to admit to any involvement in that, and clearly they do have some involvement in that, judging by all the military and government people abductees have seen during their abductions. Whether they have an agreement or not, which I think is likely, but they definitely have some involvement in it. Even if they didn't want to touch on that, how do you tell the American public, yes, some of you guys are being taken and there's nothing we can do about it? How do you, we're helpless.
You don't. You just don't mention it. You say, look, there was an agreement. We can't talk about all the details of that agreement because it is has national security implications. However, they've been relatively innocuous.
But I think the public should know. I mean, I don't see any avenue for the government to disclose the truth to people. But if this is a fundamental reason why the beings are here, and it seems like it is a fundamental reason why, say, yeah, Baxter, yeah. But if this is a fundamental reason why some of the beings are here to carry out these abductions and the hybridization program, whatever they're doing, then it's a very important and integral part of the UFO phenomenon. So if we do have any form of disclosure, then that is going to come up if it's a real open disclosure. So the abduction phenomenon does need to be addressed at some point, but I don't see an avenue for the government to do that. So
I think Kid Rock's has the most salient reason why they've been so reluctant.
Yeah, well, you've got a point, man.
Again,
I've got my pitchfork right here, just out of frame.
You and I are both speculative fiction authors, right? So
this is true.
I'm going to posit a theory. I don't endorse this theory. It's just a theory. Let's imagine that they did have agreements, and those agreements did specify abductions. And let's say someone on our side, on the United States, decided who gets abducted and who doesn't. Right? So let's say it's based on, I don't know, certain characteristics, right? And let's say we find out it's harmful. And let's say it's not as beneficial as one would think. Or on the reverse side, maybe it's beneficial, right? And maybe only certain people got bestowed with this stuff that were chosen by our people, right? So, let's say it's harmful. It causes permanent damage. And let's say that whatever your genotype is, you're in that population. I mean, people start burning things down. As they should. Well, I shouldn't say as they should. I do not endorse violence. I do not.
Peacefully,
disavow
emotionally peaceful protest.
That's right. But that could cause massive problems. So, and
I had ChatGPT play out a podcast interview between Joe Rogan and an alien. Rogan asked about that. The alien tried saying that they determined the humans subconsciously were okay with it. Yeah. Okay. I would like to see that. If you have a link to that, I want to read that conversation. What specifically did Greer say? He says a lot of stuff.
I almost think he's a disinformation agent. I think he actually did take money. It just wasn't $2 billion.
I don't think he's a disinformation agent of the government. I mean, this is going to sound out there, but I think he's a disinformation agent of the phenomenon. He is an alien apologist who says that aliens are non-humans, have never done anything wrong, and that the only villains are the black ops government people that have been carrying out the MyLabs abductions and so on. So he's demonizing the government. So I don't think that he's a government stooge, but he is an apologist for the beings that are carrying out abductions and denying there is an abduction phenomenon.
What is his face turquoise covering eyes?
I don't know.
It's a very mysterious comment.
Greer, yeah, well, that's my theory too, Armac. I think that Greer is a hybrid. He fits the typical profile of the egg-shaped head with the eyes far apart, which is typical of hybrids, although not by any means. Doesn't seem to describe all of them, but some of them are like that.
I mean, I think the other issue too. This kind of brings it up. Maybe we don't need to know. I think the government is between a rock and a hard place, right? Because there might be stuff that they can't disclose, but on the other hand, if they don't start disclosing, I mean, humanity might not survive, right? In terms of what's going on with the planet, what's going on like with corruption, things like that. Like, I think they kind of have to offer something because, again, as cited in the congressional hearing, and there's also a gap poll, you can look it up, but trust in U.S. government institutions is the lowest I think it's been since they've studied it or started asking the question. So
you said that it's a 70-year plan, and yes, exactly what you're saying. Greer said that there's a 70-year plan of like disclosure. Is that what you mean?
yeah, I think that's what she means.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It sounds like I may have heard him say something like that before. That's an interesting thought. I don't know. Is it a plan by the beings or is it a plan by the government? Sally, if you can remember, I would love to know what he meant. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the only way it makes sense because he has a genuine affinity with the phenomenon. He does C5, and yeah, he'll take credit for some flares, but generally he has a real affinity with the phenomenon, and he's able to call in beings and able to get them on camera. These phantasmal, other dimensional beings sometimes.
Actually, this is a great point. Like these are the same government that did the Tuskegee experiments with syphilis and things like that to African American populations, right? Or black populations. Now, I guess that's the more they keep, people keep changing the politically correct terminology. But if those people, and they're the same people that put strontium 90 in cereal of like handicapped people, like, so if these people were making the same decisions back in 1947, then absolutely they were probably right. Yeah, this whole region, don't worry, like just stay away from New York City because that's where all the elites live. Like leave
Stay
them
away
alone.
from the golf course. Everybody else is fine.
Yeah, so yeah, it's totally possible.
No hybrids want to be bald.
Well, I mean, grays are bald, allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah. They don't seem to. Yeah, no. There's some species that seem to have hair, like the tall whites and the Nordics, and you get hair from a few of them. But
I mean, I think Dottie's retired, right? Lou Elizondo was still
retired. We don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean those guys. I mean, he's getting old, but Lou Elizondo was still a Pentagon employee after he left the military. So just keep that in mind.
He still has his clearances. I don't know if he's employed by the military.
He was listed as like a DoD contractor at one point.
And at one point he was like enlisted. He was like doing something for the Space Force, like something like that, like a consultant or something.
This is also highly possible.
Yeah,
like, this is the Occam's razor answer. So,
but he does seem to have a genuine affinity with the phenomenon. There's a lot of videos and pictures of his C5 sessions when he's able to call these beings in.
By the way, did you watch the Greer interview on what's that guy who's like a professional wrestler guy?
Jesse Ventura? No.
Logan Paul. Did you watch that?
Oh no, I don't follow Logan Paul.
Well, so Logan Paul interviewed, I think that's his name, Greer, on his show. Remember I told you it was like the dumbest, like my IQ fell by 50 points.
I think I made myself watch a few minutes of that. Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think of that interview?
I think I lost 5 IQ points in that.
I mean, it was just, you could see, I don't know how Greer maintained his composure because he's not, despite what you think about Greer, he's a smart guy. He's not an idiot.
Oh yeah, he's a smarty. Yeah.
And these guys were idiots. I mean, they were stupid. And
from what I've seen of Logan Paul, he's pretty much a moron. Yeah. I don't need his voice in ufology.
Yeah, Jack Parsons is a very creepy story. You know that story?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love the Jack Parsons story. It's an awesome, creepy, delicious story. I would love to know the full story.
Yeah, who knows? But he basically founded or was like a very important personality involved in the development of the U.S. rocketry program, right?
He was like one of the founders of NASA, a disciple of
Caltech and disciple of Aleister Crowley. Died in a fire They're
close,
allegedly he
close
was
friends with
conduct-
L. Ron Hubbard until L. Ron stole his wife. And then but they did magic rituals together. They did perform sex magic. That was and maybe they were able to do stuff. I don't know.
Well, I mean that's a theory behind him dying in a fire. He was conducting a ritual when he died. So
it wouldn't surprise. There's so much weird stuff going on around Jack Parsons. I wouldn't be surprised if he actually had tapped into something. Aleister Crowley apparently tapped into something and was able to summon a being.
Lamb, Lamb. Which
So
kind of looks like a gray, kind of.
Yeah, it really does.
Smaller
really
eyes.
Does. So I think Jack is an interesting cat. I would love to know the full story.
All right, what else we have?
Yeah. I want to read that fake interview with Joe Rogan and an alien. Yeah, man, Johnny, those 3 objects, the one in Canada and Alaska and Lake Huron, is it? Those are all still, they haven't released any of the video logs, no debris. They said
should we watch? Should we watch? No, because we're kind of. Would that be in terms of his content? I don't.
Oh, Richard Dolan.
Yeah, we shouldn't. We shouldn't.
Probably not. I don't know what I don't know what's allowed and what's not. I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
So, oh man, Moon Man needs to jump in on this one, but I can't. I'm not going to say too much, but.
It's afternoon my time. It's about time.
Yeah, we should.
Lunch.
Yeah, we should. All right, let's just go through the. Oh my God! All right, we're just going to do some rapid fire on the questions, and then we have to end this thing.
But I might be so jazzed. I'll do a live stream later. I've got to.
I mean, that is true. They basically did.
Yeah, no, the government's done some iffy stuff, guys. Look at it into MK Ultra. The government's done some shady stuff, man. And if those minds are the same minds that have been guiding our control group policies or what is, if those are the architects of the cover up, then yeah. I love the Jack Parsons story, but I want to know what the real deal is.
He's definitely in hell.
I'm not going to comment on that.
I think Musk knows more than he says publicly. There's no way you could be launching rockets into space and not see any of this stuff. I think it's one of these things where he doesn't.
If you've got enough cognitive dissonance, you could.
I mean, I think he has so much money tied up in the government with SpaceX that he does all his other crazy stuff, but that's one place where he's just like, all right, I promise I'll keep my mouth shut. I won't touch it.
No, Johnny, that's a great point. I love the Gary McKinnon story. I think that his story and Terry Lovelace and others present some really compelling evidence of some sort of secret space program, beyond the Corey Good BS.
Wait, there are launch rituals at NASA? What?
What kind of rituals?
Yeah, that's an open question. That's definitely. If you know anyone or have a link, Kick Rocks, I'd be interested. I think there are going to be more hearings, but I think that it's just they're kind of floating it right now to see how the media and how it's received, and if it increases their likability ratings, then we'll definitely see more hearings.
Right. Well, the one congressperson was saying that he expected some legislation to come out of this.
And that's been floating around too. That's the Schumer stuff.
He said specifically legislation to come out of that hearing. So I'm curious to see.
It's gonna be reporting standards for pilots. That data. That'll be that kind of nonsense.
I mean, I understand that that's important, but that's not what this hearing should have been focused on to my mind.
Yeah,
that should be something that is done by Sean Kirkpatrick and Arrow. This is
definitely a super deep rabbit hole, though. By the way, there's a book called Final Events. It's written by Nick Redfern that goes into the whole Crowley aliens are demonic kind of hypothesis. It's super creepy.
I have
It's a super
issues
creepy
with
book.
Nick Redfern. A lot of his research doesn't really resonate with me. Yeah.
I'm not saying I agree with it. I just say it is a fascinating book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he has to be read in. Absolutely. I have no idea what that's about.
Yeah.
If only cows could testify.
Yeah. If the cows could testify, they would have something to talk about.
Yeah, they definitely put Sean Kirkpatrick on blast, especially Fox, right? Congresswoman Fox.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Right. Oh, so he lied to us. Okay, good to know. Thank you. All right, you need to eat, Jack, because you need to grow up and be strong. I do not need to eat. My effective eating is my Dunkin' plug, which I'm not a sponsor, but if Dunkin' ever wants to sponsor me,
If anybody wants to chip in,
that's right.
the plug is there.
Oh boy, another one.
Well, thank you so much, Sally. And y'all be sure to subscribe to Through the Glass Darkly. He does some of the best interviews with interesting people around.
And most, I mean, I can't say all, but most of them are actually, they're like, I think all of them, but most are definitely legit, like Stargate program, like actual people who definitely did all this stuff. Oh yeah, YouTube doesn't really push me, so I appreciate that, Mr. Legendary Stinson. Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, I think that face was just a projection of my fear. Once I realized what it was, I was no longer afraid of it. I was just kind of creeped out by the whole thing, but that was just my fear, and it wasn't a real entity in any way. It was just I was just in this void with nothing to latch on to, and I started to get afraid, and I projected this scary face.
I would love to interview Duncan Trussell. You know who that is, right?
I don't know who that is.
There's like the Midnight Gospel, that show on.
Oh, I love Midnight Gospel.
That's Duncan Trussell.
Yeah, I've watched that show entirely sober. Yes, it's very enjoyable.
Okay.
Entirely sober. This
is the launch ritual thing. So Tyler Durden is actually, his real name is Tim Taylor, and in American Cosmic, he's this personality who is tied into all this stuff.
Tyler D.
Yeah. He's also tied into the Bledsoe.
That's what Bledsoe calls him, is Tyler D.
Or no, that was Pasolka called him that, but Bledsoe just called him Tim.
No. And a lot of the interviews and stuff over the years that the Bledsoes have given, they call him Tyler D. And that could have become because of their association with Pasolka. Maybe they got that from her.
Yeah, well, I mean, in UFO of God, the book was like published this year, so he's been outed in that book as Tim Taylor.
Okay, yeah.
That's. But you're.
Yeah, I'm not talking about UFO God. That was a great book though. But I learned of the word Tyler D, from listening to their interviews with Ryan and Chris. And
in American Cosmic, it's also Tyler D, because that was before. Right. Yes, exactly, Tyler D from Fight Club. So yes, codename. Absolutely. All right.
First rule of Fight Club is Jack's got to have lunch.
Yeah, Jack not eating lunch does not make for a dull boy and a very angry man. So thank you, everyone, and good afternoon, good night, good morning, wherever you are, and thank you for indulging our crazy theories about the nature of reality. And we look forward to seeing you. So make sure you subscribe to both channels, Cosmic Road and Through Glass Darkly. I do the in-depth interviews. He does the news that's like, I basically go to the UFO news that's very timely all the time. So I appreciate you, Jack, and everybody should subscribe to your channel if they're not.
Thank you so much, John. It's been a blast.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for watching.